Hello and welcome to the Overton Audios podcast. My name is Connor Chadwick.
I'm Daniel Patton.
And on today's podcast, I'm going to be talking to Michael Cox about Doctor Who, the First Doctor Adventures, Lost in Time 2.
Whoop, whoop. And later on the podcast, we'll be talking about the Overton exclusive MatchGirls of Bow. So, Connor, how are you doing this week, sir? Well, this month, really.
I am very warm.
Yes, there's a heat wave.
Yes, I might have said it in previous summary time podcasts, but when it gets to the heat wave sort of stuff we're having at the moment, my apartment turns into a big greenhouse.
Yeah, I remember. And I visited your house many a summer, and it gets
warm.
It gets bigger than a sauna in Spain.
Indeed. The problem is it's affected my sleeping. Because I'm now... Oh, do you know what's worse? I don't want to get too TMI about it.
Oh.
The worst thing in the world is when you've sweated in bed.
Yeah.
I hate that. And then...
It's the fabric, isn't it? It's when the fabric gets... Yeah.
Yeah, and the fabric of like your pillowcase, you don't feel like, what was the point in washing the night before? What was you feel like you need another shower again after that. And you're like, this isn't right. This isn't right at all. You wake up and basically it's like you got warmed up on a leather sofa. You just sort of peel yourself out, and you're like, oh god. Like last night, I didn't get to bed properly until about half two ish in the morning, because I just kept waking up boiling, and then eventually I got to sleep, and I woke up at like just before 7. So I was like, oh well, this is it. Fair enough. I'll stay up. But yes, other than the heat and everything, I have had I have been productive. I got an entire volume written and scripted. Well, I had to write one episode of a volume and then script edit the rest, and that's out in November. What I will say what it is. I think I have already to some extent. But it's the first volume of the Alacrity Doctor Adventures.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was meant to come out in March, admittedly, but it was a mixture of developing the volume and also trying to make sure, Matt and Thomas, who were producing it as well, were happy with the stories. Things just took a little bit longer, but we had to push it back. But we've got it done now. It was right to do so because it's 3 months after its original date, so it was right to push it back. But we're now currently in the recording stages. And we're aiming for that to be out November sort of time. Yeah, it's looking good. And then I've only got one more thing left, one more audio left to write for. And then that's all of this year finished. So I'm in a really good position at the moment because we're obviously about to hit into the second half of the year.
Fantastic, sir. Fantastic.
It's very good. It's very good indeed. Yes. And then but obviously, Dan, you'll know this because we work together as well. Been very busy with work.
It's been non-stop.
It very much has been. There's been a lot of work going on. And we are very, very, very tired. But nonetheless, how have you been?
I've been very tired as well. This past month, as you know as well, we have been in high gear. We're filming for the Fractured Timeline finale.
You have. It's been very good to see like all the behind the scenes stuff. I've only seen as much as everybody else, really.
Yeah,
It's been good.
We've been filming a lot of spoilery stuff. We got into the bigger stuff for the finale. The other week, this solid week of filming with Aiden, Ruben, of course Onyx plays Maggie and she's in it. Spoilers.
Whoa.
But yeah, it's going really well. There's stuff there I'm really proud of.
Did we talk about it much in the last part? I don't know if we did. I think we were too distracted with it being a new podcast or a new version of the podcast that we didn't really talk about it because you've done filming in, what was it, April? Because James Sutton flew over. James Sutton, who plays Fraser Ward, no less.
Yes.
He flew over to Ireland to do some filming for that. And then, of course, you've obviously, I think, I can say this because it was Marinus cliffhanger.
Yeah.
Where it revealed Ruben Roper is playing that.
The Taylor, yeah.
Yeah, so you've been filming those scenes as well. It's all coming together. It's all coming together. I'm glad that because I mean, oh, you've already announced the cast, haven't you?
Yeah, I've announced the cast. Only, well, at the time, there's still two mysterious characters to be announced. We've
But you know,
two,
you've
two.
announced myself and
Chelsea, yes.
Chelsea. Yes,
You are
good,
the
good.
only two left to film for the finale.
Really,
Yep, you're the only two left.
really, you've what? Hang on, that is news to me. Hang on, you've not got anything else to do.
I have nothing left to do for Ruben. I still got bits to do for myself and Anya, because we're the two main leads, obviously. But
Yeah.
external cast, and Chelsea are the only ones left to film.
No, we're not. No, I don't like delaying people. You shouldn't have told me that.
Yep, that you heard it here first. If it doesn't come out soon, well,
No. God, I didn't know that. I thought you had. I thought like we were just another piece to the.
you are the next block, which will be one of the last blocks to be filmed.
God,
It's coming really quickly, this ending, mate.
you've organized it well. Like you know, because I remember like when we, you know, how long did it take to Dimension of the Daleks? That was that. But then again, I suppose you had Aiden over for so long that you were able to get a lot filmed.
Yeah, but we're also
Um,
working with I think it was like
mhm.
restrictions at the time.
That's true, and Marinus as well. Marinus, we shot the bits that were literally at mine, February 2022.
Yes, and then we filmed more Marinus in 2022. We didn't finish filming Marinus until the summer of 2023.
No, that's the thing. So I've expected that there'd just be that after me there'd just be so much more left to do. So when
I took
you're
I
telling
took
me the other
all
ones.
of the start of this year to plan out the filming.
Well, I mean, it shows. I'm genuinely surprised there. Like, I didn't even know. I'm obviously I'm not privy to how you've been planning it specifically, but I didn't know. Blimey. The finale, you what? We've been basically for those listening. I've known roughly what the idea was since before your series started.
Yep.
Like not even Uncharted Past or Fractured Timeline. You always knew where it was headed. So it's always been this big, massive idea. So for you to tell me it's almost done, I'm like, no, no, it isn't. It can't
Oh yeah.
be.
Yeah, SDA done. Yeah.
But
I'm a,
I suppose it's one of those things of it's been around for ages because you haven't been able to start doing it. So the fact that you've almost got it done is kind of apt because you can now do it.
yeah, exactly. And I took just basically like you know how big this finale is, like you've seen the pages.
I have.
So I at the start of this year, I finished writing that script. I finished writing that massive monster of a script. Then I spent up till April planning out what the filming was going to be and then what filming blocks we're going to have, and
Yeah.
that's how we've been able to get so far of this with this finale so far.
And then of course you've had multiple read throughs, none of which I was there for.
Yeah, no, that
This
was
is
work. That was
the
work.
biggest problem. This is the biggest problem as well. We should probably leave this when we talk about the segments. You know, when we talk about it as a segment when it's actually done.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
you've been doing. But to say this, you've had about 3 or 4 read throughs, and people have had to read in for me because I've been so busy.
You'll be very pleased to know that James Sun does a very good impression of you.
Oh, of course he does. Of course he does. Yeah. God.
Yeah. One of these days
Oh, hello.
we're
I'm
gonna
wearing a cravat.
have one of these days we'll have Sutton fill in for you and no one will tell the difference. Am I
Well,
right?
there is that photo from years ago where he can fit perfectly into Dom's purple doctor costume.
I think that came out and everyone's thinking, oh wait, is James after Dom?
Yeah, yeah, but like it's like you're almost going to have him wear my costume. The only problem is I'm a bit of a larger frame than he is, so it'll just be really baggy clothes on him.
I think he wore my costume once. Like he wore like the coat, you know, the sort of like floral design coat I have.
Yeah, yeah.
He wore it once and it just draped over him. It was like this is not working, is it? Yeah, it's not working.
No, no, no.
It's yeah. But yeah, so
I suppose if we're going to go into segues here, I'm assuming you have one planned, but I've thought of one.
Well, I was going to say, well, we are talking about the end here, so let's go back to the beginning with the first Doctor, shall we?
Oh, well, okay. That's your one. We'll also say mine. Speaking of ideas that one has had in their mind for a while, let's go to Michael Cox with the first Doctor. Pick whichever segue you want, audience. We've given you options.
Let's just cut to it, I think, at this stage.
Yes, I agree. I agree.
Overton Audios presents
Now, my dear, I feel in need of a distraction. Perhaps we should think about a little trip of our own, yes?
7 more cases of the burning fever hit London.
This is not native to Earth.
Say your piece.
I told you to get off this planet. This is between me and you. Oh, I'm sorry.
Can I help you, sir?
My dear Mr. Wilde, how wonderful to meet you in person.
People and things are completely different.
Yes, it was something of a spectacle, wasn't it?
It is terrible to behold. You will need all your courage to confront it.
Where are you, monster? Show yourself!
Oh no! We're going to be sucked out into the vortex.
Doctor Who, The First Doctor Adventures, Lost in Time 2, coming the 15th of June 2024 at 12 p.m.
Hello and welcome back to the podcast, and I'm here with Michael Cox, the writer of The First Doctor Adventures on Overton Audios and playing the First Doctor himself. Hello, Michael.
Good to speak to you again, Connor. Hope you're well.
I'm well, thanks. I'm well. How are you?
Not too bad, thank you.
Oh, good, good. Now, the last time you were on the podcast, I think it was nearly 2 years ago. I think we were talking about this. It was October 2022. And we talked about, was it the first volume, Lost in Time 1?
It was indeed, yes.
Yeah, and now here we are to talk about Lost in Time 2, and we'll talk a little bit about the Wanderers in the Fourth Dimension as well, as we didn't get a chance to when it came out around 6 months ago as of recording. So Lost in Time 2 is a sequel volume, but even though when we release it, it will still say episodes 4, 5, and 6. In the same way that, I suppose it's in the same way that when, what was a good example? When I released Time Traveler, Time Traveler Cataclysm, even though it would be the second volume, it's the next set of episodes of a series.
Yeah.
So this will be episodes 4, 5, and 6 of the Lost in Time story, which are, episode 4 is London's Burning, episode 5 is The Importance of Being Oscar, and episode 6 is Saved by the Bells. Now at the point of this recording, it's already out. So again, yeah, go and listen to it if you haven't already. We're going to be talking spoilers and big story plot points, which are very, very important. So please go ahead and listen to that. When we started making this, I think we had a few discussions because I know we've gone through the origins already. I'll just skim over it. It started off, didn't it? I believe it started off with your first appearance on Overton Audios was in Doctor Who Transcendence.
Indeed, yes.
And then it went on to the Federation War, and then you told me about some scripts and stories that you've been working on. And that was the stories for Lost in Time.
Indeed.
Which we then actually got fully made and recorded in 2021, but it didn't come out until the end of 2022 because that was when I did volumes in a day and I had all the time in the world. So was it always an intention to do a second volume of Lost in Time?
Well, as we discussed between ourselves through the magic of Facebook on a number of occasions, I was just so delighted with the opportunity to work with you. I think that Overton Audios, and obviously you are the let's call it the CEO, the principal creator and editor-in-chief, but there are other people that are at certain levels helping, and of course then there's all the voice artists as well. So it is very much like a family. that works together, and being part of that has been great. And being able to do any of those adventures, as it's I enjoy the creative process. And so I can get a certain level of satisfaction simply by writing a Doctor Who story. And I can read it back, and I've got the voices in my head of how different characters will sound. And yeah, it's enjoyable. But to actually have things made where it takes it to a whole new level of experience. And so, yeah, I was tremendously pleased when you said, yeah, I think we can work with this. You looked at the scripts, you went through them. You've got obviously got a lot of experience and a good eye on these things. So you reassured me that, yeah, this will work. And so that was good. But I felt a sort of momentum that I thought, well, I'm sure I've got some more ideas that I can share with you. And, you know, if I write stories in a certain way, they can be almost like modular. So you can stick them together in probably any old order, or you might say, oh, well, yeah, we could do a special perhaps in the future. And yeah, that'll be fine. But I might not be thinking of doing much in the way of First Doctor stuff over the while because of all the other different sort of releases that you're already committed to. So I sort of thought, well, we've got those three. It's given the First Doctor and indeed Susan new life, but through Overton Audios, and we'll see how things go. And I think you did say to me, as a reality check against my me getting too idealistic or enthusiastic about the whole project, was, well, we'll do these and then we'll test the water with the fan base and see what responses we get. And well, as you know, sometimes people were commenting when the first series went up, and certainly the comments that I saw were positive, and almost, one might say, implicitly encouraging us to do more. And so, I would obviously show my gratitude for people in the comments, and just thought, well, I've still got other ideas, so I'll pursue them, and then at a certain point I'll drop them into your lap and see what response I get. And yeah, and even if it takes another year or two before they're made because of scheduling, or we might say, yeah, actually those stories will work, that's good. I was prepared for that wait. If you were to say, no, either the stories don't work, or, well, actually, it's better for the First Doctor to only come out once in a while, and then it keeps it fresher and people are then wanting it, and then they're champing at the bit for it, and then we can say, oh yes, we will give you some First Doctor stuff. I don't know. It depends. I don't know how one markets these things. I'm a bit naive, I think, in terms of satisfying the demographics of the Whovian world. But anyway, when we actually got round to sort of looking at the responses, thought, oh, there is mileage in doing some more of this. And so I set myself to work on some stories. Little interesting side note on Saved by the Bells, because you will be aware, and many others who listen to the podcast also, that Big Finish does a competition each year in honor of Paul, who sadly died. And I did enter that.
Okay.
And I wrote a brief. Obviously, I didn't get anywhere with it. This was a few years ago, I think before we'd even met.
Mm.
And it was the idea of the Doctor going to the medieval London of Dick Whittington's time, meeting him, and then this whole business with the cat. And as you probably know, the legends and the stories that grew up around the real person was like, you know, he gets up as far as Archway. I used to live not far from there, in fact, at one point in my life. And there is they've got like a sculpture of the cat not far from the hospital, actually, the Whittington Hospital, funnily enough, it's called. It's just up from Archway
funny.
Tube Station.
I've got because you know, in my day job I work in construction. We're doing a job there at the moment in Whittington Hospital.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just some refurbishment works in some of the walls, but yeah, when you say that, I'm like, I know exactly what that looks like.
Yeah. Well, and there's that idea that it's the turning point where he turns back, where he still can hear Bow bells, which I don't know whether I've ever measured the distance, but I think that would be far too far. But I had this whole idea that the Eighth Doctor and Charlie were going to have to use this sound wave by using the sonic boosted through the TARDIS to send this sound wave all the way up to Archway, to somehow disable some feline creature that was out of control, which then becomes just reduced to the cat. It's like a changeling. In certain conditions, it gets out of control and, you know, grows bigger and feral and murderous. So that was what I pitched as my Paul. Is it Scrag? Rag? I can't remember his name now.
Bragg, yeah.
Bragg. Of course it is. Sorry, should remember that.
You're good.
And yeah, that didn't really go anywhere. I mean, for those things, you have to just give a sort of plot, sort of point thing, and then just give like the opening scene. And yeah, I do like the Eighth Doctor, you see. He is a favourite Doctor of mine. But when we were sort of thinking about follow-ups to Lost in Time, I thought, I could revisit that idea. It's not going to go anywhere with Big Finish, but maybe it can be reimagined and some of the elements can be kept.
Yeah.
And it could be a First Doctor and Susan story, which it now is. And I suppose the thing that will be obvious to anyone who's seen the titles of the three episodes now is they're all based on the names of TV shows.
Yes.
You know, although slightly tweaked in one sense. And I don't know whether that's me doing a little mischievous strategy of misdirection, because people think, oh, what's London's Burning? Is the Doctor going to go and help some firefighters somewhere? And of course, it's not about fire at all.
I remember them running the original title for that episode. Well, I think it was just called the Burning Plague originally.
Yes, yeah, and yeah.
I remember that.
But then
There was a draft of the script that you sent in, and it was just called the Burning Plague at the time. And you went, ignore that when renaming it.
that's it. Yeah.
No.
I think in the light of episode 5, it gets very confusing, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Of the importance of being Oscar, and then Saved by the Bells rather than Saved by the Bell, which is of course the American show. But yeah, they were enjoyable to write. The last one was the hardest to write, in spite of the fact that I'd already done some work on that as an Eighth Doctor story. That's changing that and putting in the other characters of the First Doctor and Susan, who have very different sort of language and dynamic between them. That wasn't a problem at all. But yeah, there were quite a number of drafts to get to where we ended up, because I was still holding on to some of the original story elements, and they just weren't working. But yeah, it was interesting as an exercise in composition, shall we say, of having enough self-discipline to say, this isn't working. You've tried several times to make this element work. It's a whole section of script. You've just got to get rid of it.
Yeah.
Almost like start again. Where do you need to reach? And think of a new way to reach it.
Yeah.
So it was simplified. I introduced an alien police officer, and yeah, well, you think it works, otherwise you wouldn't have approved it and
No, I always
allowed it to be recorded. Yeah.
I always have and take a lot of pleasure in reading the scripts and editing them. They just feel so authentically in that era. So I can appreciate, like you say, with regards to taking a bit of time to work out Saved by the Bells. You were adapting it from an Eighth Doctor story into a First Doctor story, and in a way, in some ways, not in a bad way, but you kind of, with the First Doctor, you have to scale back a bit, because the First Doctor is not, he's not that kind of hero. He's not that kind of person. He's much more of an explorer. He's an observer. He's a thinker. He's not so much someone who would go wait there and run off and go after them. He would have, of course, I'm not saying he wouldn't, give chase, but he wouldn't have the same effect that, for example, like the Eighth Doctor might. And obviously, there's dynamics to think about, like you said, with Eight and Charlie had a very different dynamic to the First Doctor and Susan. There were so many elements that I imagine needed a review. But no, it's a nice continuation either way. All episodes 4, 5, and 6, and it was a nice way of not with the whole lost in time element. It was great that you were able to find a way of not having it be the same concept as the first volume, where obviously in the first volume, the First Doctor finds himself with a vortex manipulator that belongs to someone else, and it glitches and pulls him through into different times and places, really. In fact, actually, the first episode, he's not even actually been pulled by a vortex manipulator. It's a completely different race entirely. That's the Enemies of Time, I believe, where they pull him to a different location. He happens to gain the vortex manipulator for those 2 episodes after.
Indeed.
Meanwhile, in 4 to 6, the vortex manipulator doesn't actually come into play again until the end of episode 4. It's just more like I'm always grateful and thankful for the time being given to set those things up, even if it results in a whole kind of story, if you know what I mean. Because in London's Burning, the First Doctor and Susan aren't the ones who are lost in time. It's Wennick.
Indeed, yes.
Even though I believe it's written that the Stovian Empire that he's from is running parallel to, isn't it running parallel to, I think it said in the Importance of Being Oscar.
He's actually from 1915.
Yeah, that's it, yes.
Yeah. And because he was contemporary with, obviously, he was, in Brain and Brawn, episode 2. That was his era. So that was like 1913 when the Doctor meets Walter Peabody in Montana, and he becomes the Mountain Mourner of Montana.
Yeah.
And that's obviously when Wennick's from. And then, in fact, the doctor cross-examines Wennick when he gets stuck in 1963 of saying, but you were in, and he says, yes, 1913, and it's been a couple of years.
Yeah.
He says, well, you're not whatever age. And he said, well, I got myself a vortex manipulator. And he's going, oh, they're handing them out like sweets. Like everybody's got them.
I like the fact that we've kind of the way that the Doctor's always got a disdain for them. We've
Yes,
kind of set that up as right, because
it's
it's
almost like
because of
albino
this.
or something.
Yeah, like the reason
Maybe
why he's
Nemo's
always
a word, I don't know, but
the reason why he's always had a bit of a disdain for vortex manipulators is suggested it being that this for this reason. I really enjoyed the importance of being Oscar. I really enjoyed the editor, like the editor. I am the editor, but I really enjoyed editing. That there was a lot of sound design that I put into that to try and make it feel as authentic as possible. Like, when they're walking down the cobbled path, as it was there, because you're when you write as well, you also are sure to give a sort of visual description as well.
yeah.
So that I can try and imagine it as close to possible as to what was in your head, that I can then know what sounds need to be added. So, when they're walking along the cobbles, you can hear the very light pitter patter of rain on the coats that they're wearing. As they approach the theatre, we make the rain get a little bit heavy. All those little details as they run in. But also, I really liked James York's performance as Oscar Wilde as well. There was a bit of confusion between Reuben Roper and James York with because obviously they swapped bodies in that episode.
Yeah.
They accidentally read the wrong set of lines. They read because obviously there was Oscar in brackets Wennick's voice, because that's meant to be Oscar in Wennick's body.
Yeah.
They read it the other way around, where they thought, oh, I'm playing Wennick, but I'm pretending to be, like, you know what I mean? Like, but I'm having to be there. And I'm like, no. You both got to re-record and do it the other way around. And considering that they hadn't really properly heard each other's performances, they did a really good impression of one another.
Oh, good.
Because I think, well, they kind of like already know of each other within like different fandom circles already. But no, it was really good. I really I enjoy the scenes when the Doctor's sort of working it out, or putting the pieces together and basically telling off the villain.
Yeah.
I think I really liked. I was showing this to a couple of people, because the character of Wennick could almost suit modern Who as well.
Yes.
But the way that he clashes with the first Doctor as well, and the way that Ruben, like when I was telling him about coming back for Wennick, but remember, I want this to be as authentic as possible. Because I don't know if you've been listening to the Stephen Noonan stuff on Big Finish.
No.
There's a story where they end up in 2020 London, and there's and you know the social media called TikTok.
Oh yeah.
There's a TikTok influencer in that who goes and live streams, and the first Doctor accidentally walks into it, and you can hear him on the live stream, and I'm like, I could never imagine the first Doctor being on a TikTok live stream. There's an element of contemporary that is always about the first Doctor.
Yeah.
That even when he goes to the future, you feel that era still.
Yeah.
You feel the era it was made in still. Again, it's like the stuff we talked about. I think we talked about it briefly the other night, but when we've done the Dripping Hartnell podcast, we talked about, I think, part 5 of the Keys of Marinus. Despite the fact it was an authoritarian city that he went to, they had still very high-collared black uniforms with kind of an eye with a lightning bolt going through it. And you go, this reads very, and you got to think as well, when they made that, it was what, 19, it was one of the, I think it was Keys Marinus was their 5th ever story. That's still 18 years after World War II.
Indeed, yeah.
So it's still very close to people.
which is what I think the Daleks were pitched as such, and they're still called that to this day. My point is that with Ruben's performance, it's modern, but yet the way he performs it and the way that you've been able to sort of lead him via your writing as well still enables it to suit that era. Like I can still imagine it like in like telesnap form. I've been trying to. I want to because I'm starting to do visual trailers now. I want to do something like a telesnap trailer at one point.
Oh wow. Yeah.
Where just get little photoshops together, add the little blur and the film flicker, curved edges of the film,
Oh wow.
and just like put together like a little trailer from telesnap stuff. Because I think that'd be great to have all those elements, but almost well, I'll tell you the idea I've got for that, but I can't tell you it whilst we're on record, so to speak.
Oh right.
It's a bit more of a spoilery for the future kind of style thing.
Right.
But no, I've really enjoyed well, for example, as well, like in Lost in Time 2, they go to the secondary console room.
Yes, indeed.
Which I believe is the same one that the Fourth Doctor goes to. Is they mentioned you mentioned that it's a bit more timber. I made sure on the sound design to have it. I was found myself Googling wooden switches and all this sort of thing and trying to like find I'm gonna do a timber, the sound like but not like obviously not like tree bark or anything as silly as that, but just or I was able to find brass switches on waxed timber.
Wow.
And I thought
it's so specific, isn't it? Goodness.
I thought that'll have to do.
No, that's brilliant.
Yeah. But as well as that, it was nice. I like the scene. There's so much I like about the stuff you write. I think that goes without saying. But I love the First Doctor and Susan exploring the TARDIS and its capabilities. I like seeing sometimes because like you hear about all these things with regards to like the Doctor going, oh, the manual, I threw it in a supernova, and you think of something really funny and over dramatic, but you're able to find a way to make it contextual to the story. Like there's so many moments. Like I mean, recently I had someone tweet at me the scene with the First Doctor and Susan talking to Ian and Barbara about meeting Henry VIII.
Ah, yes.
And they went, and somebody tweeted this going, did we ever see this? And then they had quote tweeted them going, yes, you can see it on Overton Audios.
Yeah.
And it's literally it's William Hartnell obviously playing the First Doctor going, yes. And then I threw, was it the Parson's Nose?
Parson's Nose.
Yes, that's it. And he talks about, and I threw it back at him. And it's literally to the T of Susan saying, well, yeah, we had to get locked up because the TARDIS was in there. And I'm thinking, it was like when you listen to His Majesty's displeasure, it's not felt forced at all. It's all been articulately done, but it's also so simple as well. If you get my meaning, like it doesn't feel like when they say the story, it sounds, oh man, that sounds amazing, but then you listen to it back and you go, well, no, that's just completely natural that happened. They just planned it to be that way from the start. And I don't know if my meaning's properly coming across, but it's all very natural. It's all very natural, and I like it when legends and stories and everything like that are actually quite simple because that's how life is. And certainly fits into what the show was at that time, which was trying to find its feet, trying to find its identity, and also had very little budget. So
indeed,
so I very much enjoy those things. And we were talking about this earlier, and I realized you gave such a great podcast answer to this, and hopefully you can remember what you said. But what was it specifically about Wennick that wanted you to bring him back and to develop him more?
Yeah, initially, when I did Brain and Brawn, or Brain or Brawn, because I think it went through a couple of iterations of whether it should be Brain or Brawn or Brain and Brawn as episode 2 of the first series. That the real focus was trying to tell some of the adventures that the Doctor and Susan reference with Ian and Barbara and then others, or in this case, it's Vicky, isn't it? When he wrestles that man, that assassin, and he says, "Oh, I know the mountain more of Montana." And I looked through the TARDIS data core wiki online to say, has it been done in the comics? Has it been done in Virgin Media? Has anybody actually covered this? And I couldn't find any reference to it having been done as a whole story. Now, maybe I've missed something. So I thought, well, there's latitude to do that story. And so the character of Wennick really was an afterthought, to be honest, because the Doctor keeps coming back to visit Walter Peabody. It was going to be actually a longer story. I had thought that there was latitude for yet another journey, maybe where he was at the State Fair and saw him wrestle for the first time, and maybe there was going to be some other problem. Maybe Frank and his fellow bullies were going to try and waylay him before he got to the State Fair, and all this sort of thing. But as you know, I'm not very self-disciplined when it comes to word count, and so therefore that was quite a long story as it was. So yeah, there might have been an extra scene to just build the relationship between the Doctor and Walter, so that when at the end of the story, the Doctor's, or the effect of the Doctor on the loss of Walter is stronger, I suppose. But I think it still works as it does. I think there was the Doctor was sufficiently invested in Walter for whatever reason, and it sort of works. So the Doctor helps him, then he flashes forward, and then he's in a situation where he's then helped by Walter. So there's the mutuality of, in a sense, the Doctor has created Walter into the sort of person that can then save him, in a sense of reflexive sort of action or whatever. And so really, when it was just thrown in as somebody else, and adding in this other element, the sci-fi element, and because it could have just been another I don't know, it could have been Frank and his bullies coming back again, or it could have been any number of other people, and I thought by this gives us an opportunity for Walter to be more amazed at the Doctor and who is this man, and then to have the impact on him effectively for the rest of his life, to pass on then to his son in turn. But when I heard Ruben Roper's performance, I was like, he did it so well. I'm not saying that other voice artists in that story didn't do well. They did. Everyone was, and the American accents was brilliant. Everyone performed so well. I suppose that's also self-praise, because of course I was in it as well as the third Doctor. But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
My fellow actors, thespians or whatever, treading the virtual boards. But it was just something about how he did it that I thought, there must be a way of bringing this character back, because the performance was so good, it warrants it. Sorry, that was a very long answer. And I thought, well, we'll see how it goes, because it might feel forced. And I think one of the words you've been using is, it's got to feel sort of natural.
Yeah.
And if it's too contrived, people will say, oh, well, and it just seemed to work. And even if he'd have just disappeared at the end of, say, London's Burning, you know, maybe he could have been taken off by, it could have been written in a different way. He and the Rani could have taken a shine to each other because they're both like wearing leather jackets, you know. Who knows? Or she could have thought, well, he's a bit of a bad boy, and you know, maybe because his moral compass doesn't point exactly north, I could use him as a henchman. So that could have been another version. But you know, it seemed to work where what we got with, yeah, I think also the Doctor, as I said to you before, the Doctor, he deals with sort of fairly responsible men, even though they're probably in different age brackets. We've got Chesterton, who is a science teacher, very responsible sort of person. We've got Stephen, who is a pilot, so, you know, and we've got Ben, who is a naval rating. So, you know, they're doing responsible jobs. Wennick, as a sort of artifact hunter who is doing so illegally, is a bit of a bad boy, but he's not really, he's a rehabilitated character in a sense, because he's a bit of a bad boy, but he's not a baddie in terms of how we might label things in the show. So the Doctor has got this person that he's having to deal with. He's not too pleased that, in a sense, Susan thinks he's quite nice, and the Doctor would want to keep bad influences away from Susan as much as possible.
We're also considering that this early on in their story, they're still in hiding.
Indeed, yes. And that was, I think, another concern that you have as the editor-in-chief, that we can't compromise the First Doctor's era by stepping into it. We have to step in with a light touch, so that another reason for not moving the ship, or the TARDIS, if you like, and finding other ways for the Doctor to explore other times and places. And in fact, as listeners will know, some sort of mysterious vortex-like portal opens in the secondary control room that takes them to medieval England and the time of Dick Whittington. Now, the answer to why that's happened is actually in another story, isn't it? Which we haven't yet made.
This is true. This is
true. And I don't know whether we even dare mention what the that series will be called. But
no, that's not just yet.
Let's not. Oh, we will tantalize the general public. Maybe we should be on safer ground if we talk a little about something else. What do you think?
Yeah, right then. Well, in terms of how Lost in Time 2 has gone, I'm very happy with it. It's also coincided in between it with another volume release, which was Wanderers in the Fourth Dimension 1, which is the origins of the Doctor and Susan leaving Gallifrey, which was, I think, and I don't know if we ever really spoke about it this way, but it was something I was ever so slightly nervous for the reception on, because everyone has their idea of why the Doctor left.
Yeah.
But I think there was a specific comment that somebody had written on the episode, which has said that it covers almost all theories.
Yeah.
It takes time to reflect and take homage to every theory that's out there. Obviously, the undisputed one is the Hand of Omega.
Yeah.
That one you can't really argue with, because it's kind of their remembrance. And yeah, what I like though is the twist that the Doctor was actually more of an accomplice rather than, again, it leads into that same thing of where the first Doctor is more of the observer and the thinker rather than the hero or the action hero, so to speak.
Yeah.
There was another Time Lord who wanted to take action and sought the Doctor's help. The Doctor gave it after some thought, but then found himself trapped and in an impossible situation. And I think well, you know, we already done a version of it in the Doctor Who Divergent series. So that's another thing we haven't spoken about.
Ah, indeed.
Never spoken about the Divergent series. You're like the main character in that. We've never spoken about that. I always like looking at, like, for example, because I play Braxiatel. I had a quite good. I was quite happy with how it turned out for Braxiatel for myself.
Yeah, indeed.
A lot of people thought I did quite a good job, and I went, "Oh, okay." I just tried to put my own spin on it, but fair enough. But I really like. There's a lot of elements where that first story could, like, well, I don't know how to speak about the fans without sounding like I'm complaining about them, which I'm not. But everyone's got their own headcanons because the show can be so fluid at times with it.
Yes.
Everyone's got their own idea of what happened, that when you try to challenge it, it can be like almost sometimes, in some cases, it can come across to them like a personal attack.
Yeah.
But we've had a very, very good reception to it. The number one I always remember, and I know I've mentioned him a couple of times, but we had Dominic G. Martin listen to it and loved it and said this is Big Finish level. And I found out from another friend who shan't be named at the moment, that Alfie Shaw, who's a producer and writer on Big Finish, has also heard it and thought it was very good. So it's generally, I think it's coming up to nearly, very soon it will be on 1,000 views.
Is it really?
I think so. I will have a quick look actually whilst we speak, but it's very, very close to it at least. God, where is it? Don't prove me wrong. Don't prove me wrong. Yeah, it's on 880 at the moment. But just ahead of it is the first episode of Lost in Time, which has got 910 views. So it's all doing very well. But yeah, there are, with Wanderers in the Fourth Dimension, were there especially with the first volume, because I know that, I think it goes without saying that Lost in Time 2 is the ending of the Lost in Time storyline. But I have mentioned in passing on other podcasts that we do have other plans for the first Doctor, so that'll be, obviously, Wanderers in the Fourth Dimension is called 1, so it implies there's more. But with the first volume, were there particular stories that you had in mind? Because obviously they reflect over, Henry VIII, and then also the Rings of Akaten.
Yes. I suppose they were safe bets, because I thought, well, those are things that have been referenced in the show. And so let's try and explore some of the things that have got a canonical element into them, and say, well, this is how we imagine that story went. Because with some of the other things we're planning, it's just our own ideas and, we're pursuing them. So it's nice to fill in some backstory to the Doctor, and to try and see how some of those adventures shape the person that we meet in An Unearthly Child. I think for some, to some degree, in spite of that conversation in the TARDIS, just before at the first episode of the Sensorites, where they're discussing their adventures, and they mention the Henry VIII incident, and they're all saying, "Oh, you've changed." And we think, and Susan said, "Oh, you to Barbara and Ian, well, you've changed." And they said, "Well, actually, you have as well." And I suppose it's tricky stepping into those adventures that are referenced in the BBC version of the show, that the Doctor has got to be more or less, I'm not saying unchanged by the experiences, but that fundamentally he is sort of unchanged by them. So he doesn't gain any sort of new experiences that change fundamentally the character that he is.
Yeah,
I'm repeating what I was saying in different ways. So yeah, I think the historical, I think one of the things is I wanted to do sort of sci-fi, sort of standard sci-fi. So we have Flight from Gallifrey, so it's based on Gallifrey. We don't actually see them anywhere else, apart from, well, out into the vortex at the end of the episode. And so it's very much based in the Doctor's homeworld. Then we are hit with a historical. So again, that's another sort of pattern that we see in the original First Doctor stuff. And then we move to sort of a sci-fi thing again with Riddle of the Rings. And of course, it's a double meaning because it's the rings of Akaten and what's happening there. But it's also, of course, the facts of the rings of Tyche, these rings that can be used to alter perception and control minds with some sort of limited effect. Yeah, and I suppose one can range around and try and find other references to things that the Doctor claims he's done in the past. But it's never clear in some of those throwaway lines that, well, when did you meet this person? Was it in your current body or your previous incarnation or last but one or whatever, or previous incarnation? So like, for instance, when the third Doctor has a bit of a rant and says, did he say he knew Mao Zedong or somebody of all people? And it's like, well, when? Was that as you, or was it the second Doctor or the first Doctor or whatever, So it's very difficult if the first Doctor references something or one of the later Doctors references something and says, like with Akaten, oh, I took my granddaughter Susan there. Right, okay, well, we can situate it. So I've been loath to explore too far for fear of not breaking, but bending canon. So it's sometimes easier to do other sort of stories of just one's own imaginative exercise. Although, having said that, are we allowed to say we've got that there will be something coming up after Riddle of the Rings, and that is a historical?
Yeah, we can say that.
And it also references something that the First Doctor says in a throwaway remark, in fact, to Ian Chesterton at one point. People will be going, if people are really that mad keen to know, then they'll be going through all the episodes with Ian and the Doctor saying, well, what other historical or what other adventure does he reference that we never see on screen? So we're actually going to explore that in a story that's already written.
See, what I like is that with a lot of the stories that you've written that were already established in the show, like you say with Rings of Akaten, you you were able to turn that episode into a moment where the Doctor could be clever and simultaneously teach Susan.
Yes.
So it's Susan who's, if you were talking about who's affected the most by the story, it's Susan. Susan learns and looks up, and it looks up to her grandfather, but it helps enrich that relationship further because obviously the way that Flight from Gallifrey was written it wasn't exactly like she planned to go either. So as a result, I'm not saying that would be a tension or a dislike, not at all, but there's going to be a little bit of just distance from her because you'd think, well, have just had to leave my planet behind. But having these moments with the Doctor, with her grandfather, I think at least they warmed my heart anyway.
Oh.
Because it's just nice to see that relationship build up as they both become as the volume would suggest, wanderers.
Yeah.
In the fourth dimension, no less. I really like those. I really like those elements, and there've been multiple themes that you write into episodes. And it's been interesting to see how we're looking at, for example, like with the Lost in Time volumes, they are set after Wanderers.
Yes.
Wanderers in the Fourth Dimension is about their adventures in the TARDIS before settling in 1963, which of course we've had a little bit of a back and forth about when the Devil's Cord came out.
Indeed, yeah.
What was it? Was it the original from the Wilderness years, the novels that they released during that time? Say One Thing. What was it called? Letters from a
Letters, Justin Richards or whatever, Letters from the Time Lords or Letters from TARDIS. I've got it on my shelf, but it's too far away to see.
Oh, no worries, but that helps relate to dates that we're using.
Yes,
and then the Devil's Cord came out, and to a completely different date, and I just sat there and thought, well, what does this mean? But that's a whole other thing that we'll get into a bit later about the terms of what we're doing about how dates work in 1963.
Yeah.
Regarding Wanderers in the Fourth Dimension, it's an opportunity really to see what they saw first, because as well as that, there's a limit, but I think a creative limit. That being, of course, the First Doctor can't meet the Cybermen, can't meet the Daleks, can't meet any of the already established classic monsters. Because, well, we know he's going to meet he meets the Daleks, and I believe it's it is the second story, isn't it? It goes on because the Daleks is the second story, then Edge of Destruction happens after, doesn't it?
Do you know, I can never remember. I think Edge of Destruction. You've got me wondering now. It's so long ago since I saw it.
I think it's Edge of Destruction is the third story, because Daleks was such a big story. They went for something a bit smaller. I'm going to find out, because I've got the entire series downloaded. Yeah, it was the Daleks. It goes Unearthly Child parts 1 to 4, then the Daleks parts 1 to 7, and then they have Edge of Destruction as a nice two-parter in between Daleks and Marco Polo.
Will I be exterminated for saying that first Dalek story is just that little bit too long for what it needs to say? I could imagine it working as a six-parter. That some of those elements, if one were to really go through, yeah.
I see what you mean. Whilst I adore the first Doctor, there are always elements. Now, I saw this. I mean, have you been watching Doctor Who Unleashed? The behind the scenes program.
No, I haven't.
There was a conversation with Russell T Davies and Stephen Moffat for Boom, and they talked about how the show has progressed over the years, and they were saying about how always, if it was a 4-parter, 5-parter, or 6 or 7-parter, the Doctor always ended up in a cell by part 3.
Right.
Because the stories were so long, he could solve it so much faster. They had to put limits on him.
Okay.
And that's kind of what happens here. They put the with the Daleks, they put the radiation in place. That solves us for about 2.5 parts, I think.
Mm.
And then they towards the end they have him and Susan locked up and left to just stand there and talk to the Daleks. So that's what enabled the parts to be longer. But so I do get what you mean. I mean,
build suspense sometimes with that sort of delay, but I mean, we're conscious that as things go on, and I like Keys of Marinus, you like the Keys of Marinus, but sometimes episodes were designed to allow for actors to be on holiday.
Oh, well, we know that from Marinus, don't we?
Yeah, so I mean, almost like, how would the adventures have gone if everyone was at work together at the same time?
You got to think who went on holiday for the Daleks master plan? Big 12-parter. Who went on the big holiday for that?
Oh yeah, goodness me.
I think to be honest, though, a lot like the Daleks could have easily have been put into a 4-parter. But I'm glad that we've got that 7-parter as well, though, in a bit of hindsight, because you really get to know and see a lot of what the Daleks do. And understand like how, well, back in the day they had their plunger like raise up in the air to mimic a Nazi salute.
Oh, indeed.
Like it was filled with that kind of imagery that just was able to strike not just fear in the children, but it made the adults feel a bit uneasy at times. Cause it just reminded them of the war. We've really gone off tangent. We ended up on Daleks, but it's still First Doctor, so it's still all right. It's acceptable. We haven't gone too far away. But with Wanderers, because I remember back, I don't remember if we had a chance to talk about this in the last podcast, but when Lost in Time was written, it was like the first one. It was written as something that would minimalize Susan's involvement.
Oh, indeed, yes.
And obviously that was the person who played Susan in Lost in Time, well, I suppose Lost in Time 1 now, was Ali Tori. But since then, Chelsea Lagan has come in playing Susan.
Yeah.
Which I do sometimes wonder what the plan was originally before we developed this, because the fact that we were able to have Susan now as a character interacting and not having to take lines from the episode.
Yeah.
It meant, I think it opened up a huge amount. Like I always wonder, like, obviously,
yes, indeed,
you had some ideas for a second Lost in Time volume, but I always wonder if they ever involved Susan properly or not, and then only when we then said, "Oh, we're going to do this," did they then change.
I think because initially, and I had to listen back to the previous podcast just to remind myself, because sometimes you get false memory and you're thinking, did I really think that or say that? I'm not sure. I better check that out. And now we've got a recording, I can, which is useful. And initially I'd written the first episode, Enemies of, well, actually all 3, with the view to taking samples of Carol Ann Ford's voice from various episodes where she's effectively a very, very background character, and it's all really First Doctor stuff. And him dealing with all these other menaces, alien and otherwise. And so really it was just like the First Doctor adventures, and Susan was, in a sense, incidental. But then you said, I've actually got a voice artist who could do Susan, and it just like, wow. And I think you played me, so I said, and I think I said to you, and I said in the that podcast, when I heard her rendition of Susan, I thought, oh my goodness, her Susan is better than my First Doctor, and I need to up my game. And so knowing that we could have someone play Susan just changed how the stories could go. I was conscious that Susan is still very young. She's 96, maybe coming up to 97. She's still a child in a sense, from the doctor's point of view. She still needs to be under his guidance. And so there is a sense in which really her exposure to Coal Hill and the teachers there, and then the first adventures in time and space with Ian and Barbara, is what helps her to mature to become, by the time we get to the Dalek invasion of Earth, ready to effectively fly the nest and be with David Campbell as his wife. So a very quick arc of maturation, we might say. So to what degree, and this would be, I mean, this is a debate for another time and maybe another place. To what degree does the Doctor infantilize Susan? I'm not sure whether he does or doesn't. But if you're always calling someone child, I'm not saying that we're going to have like this new thing now. Everyone's saying Michael is suggesting that the first Doctor gaslighted Susan or something, or infantilized Susan or something. No. I mean, I suppose part of being true to the era is recognizing that Ian was the hero and the Doctor was almost like the weird sort of wizard scientist sort of character, and Susan is the sort of like the, I don't know, the damsel in distress. But then you've got Barbara. I'm not quite sure how we categorize Barbara, because she sort of crosses over into certain roles herself, because she's an intelligent woman, and quite a self-possessed person. Yeah, so to be authentic, Susan has still got to be almost like the damsel in distress, even though that might not sit as well as with us today. Because if Doctor Who was starting now and we had a time traveling alien with his or her or their granddaughter, grandson, them, because we've got to think that maybe Susan could regenerate and she could become male, or intersex or whatever. People perhaps don't tend to think of that very often. We always focus on the Doctor in terms of the fluidity of the Time Lord regeneration. But, you know, we can't have Susan showing too much initiative. We can't have her being too defiant of the Doctor. So it does limit to some degree what we can do with Susan. But I still think that she's touching the edges of adulthood, at least from a Gallifreyan point of view. And so therefore we do see these moments where she perhaps questions her grandfather, or she demurs on a point that he makes, and he sort of like, well, what was that? And she'll say, oh, nothing.
There was something that was said, I think, in London's Burning. I believe it was when she agreed with Wennick.
Yeah.
Oh wait, no. It might have been in that episode, but he was looking at the manual and she had it.
Oh, that was it. And she said, oh, I've been looking at the manual and I thought it was handy for me to look at it as well. And he said, you need to tell me these things, child. Go and get it from your room immediately. And then she's very apologetic because, you know, she's overstepped a mark, because he's not the easiest person to deal with. I mean, Wennick, when he's sort of chatting to Susan when the Doctor's in London's Burning and they're just together, because this is the first time they've met, because they're not really, she only knows a little bit about Wennick from what the Doctor has said, so it's obviously through the lens of the Doctor's own prejudice about this antique hunter who's in the wrong place at the wrong time, trying to make a fast buck, I suppose. But if I just find it. Where is it? Sorry.
No worries.
London's burning. London's burning. Got so many files, Word documents and PDFs of completed scripts or stories. It's just coming up now. Where we see that sometimes when Susan isn't under the shadow of the Doctor, she is slightly different, but she can't be too different because otherwise people say the character has developed more as she would have done sort of when she actually left the first Doctor and she stayed on a post-Dalek Earth. So that's the trickier thing, I think. But I don't want them to be just caricatures because stories require a certain amount of character development to solve the problem of the story. Otherwise, what are they doing? They never learn from their mistakes or their adventures. So just going through, there was this whole thing about the Doctor wants to go and examine a patient. Yes, they've got to go to the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. And the Doctor sort of whisks them away. And then he says, right, you two stay out here. I shan't be long. And Wennick says, is he always like this? And what do you mean? Where do I start? High and mighty, tetchy, rude. Should I stop now? Haha, he can be like that, but you don't know him like I do. Let me guess, you're going to tell me that under that gruff exterior, he's a real teddy bear. And Susan laughs and says, no, I wouldn't say that, but he can be sweet and he is very caring. Wennick then says, maybe if I stick around long enough, he might begin to grow on me too. Susan replies, I'd like that. Wennick, softly, would you? And then the Doctor barges back into the conversation. Let's be going. And why, what we're doing now. So we're getting this Susan sort of is developing in a little bit, but not in a way that I think would worry fans.
No, well, the thing when you mention that line, I remember how Chelsea performed it, and she doesn't say it. She says it so warmly and in such affection.
Yeah,
you know, going like understanding like he's not really, you know, he never like is actually meaning like half the things he's saying in that emotive tone. He's not actually trying to hurt Susan's feelings.
No.
He just gets a bit flustered, and it's just like, oh, hang on, whoa, and all this. But it's just like I suppose it is like the ramblings of an old man. You know, it's that's who he is. I always think back like to that particular, like with that moment that you've just read out. It reminds me of the scene, for example, you know, that we saw in An Adventure in Space and Time when William Hartnell had upset Carol Ford and then made things a bit awkward. And then she went back to her dressing room, whether it was the next day or a few days later, and he'd left her some flowers. Saying sorry, because Carol will always say about William Hartnell how sweet he was, but even he had his tetchy moments too. There was very much a nice parallel between the two of them. And yeah, I agree with you with regards to with Susan. You still want an unearthly child onwards to be there to feel like it's the beginning of a larger journey.
Yes,
and that what we're seeing here at the moment are just some almost like the equivalent of work experience, or the equivalent of just getting a taster of what's to come. You don't want them to change too much, but you want them to. But I suppose in a way, you kind of in the first episodes, you have to scale both characters back.
Yeah,
see where they end up. Obviously, we know what goes on with the first Doctor. He gets warmer over time, less sort of brash. He learns to appreciate the beauty of life more rather than necessarily trying to pick up a rock and smash someone's head in with it. Yeah.
Indeed.
He learns that through the eyes of his companions. Susan learns independence. So you have to know, so you have to look at, we know where she ends up. We know now in terms of what we're doing, the middle of the story is technically Unearthly Child now. So therefore in flight from Gallifrey, she has to be almost totally dependent on him. She's got comforts at Gallifrey. She pops in and sees him by herself. She's not having to be accompanied by anyone. She makes him food and looks after him. But then, when they leave Gallifrey, it's completely out of her comfort zone. She has no idea what's going on. So she's completely in the trust and the arms of the Doctor.
Indeed.
And her ultimate complete reliance on the Doctor there is a good starting point. Because even then, in a way, you see her independence maybe even stem slightly when she decides she wants to go to Coal Hill.
Yeah.
It's a good starting point. She's there by herself. She's not worried about her grandfather or anything like that. She can go to school and do what she would like to do. So that's almost the start of it. And you even see in Unearthly Child, she even she doesn't really, I don't know if it's really standing up to the Doctor. But she does make an argument to saying, I've built a life here.
Yeah.
You can't just take that away. And the Doctor is quite warm to her, trying to explain it. Like warmer than, I suppose, or warmer than what we've been portraying so far. So that goes to show his character growth a little bit as well.
Yeah.
He tries to explain it calmly and warmly to her, going, but you must understand that we've been found.
Yeah.
And these people will go back and you're like, well, yeah, I'm sure you know it. Like all the reasons why they can't stay. And to an extent have to kidnap people. But
I mean, that was something that did bother me a bit, that in An Unearthly Child, when she says, oh, I'll leave you, and he says, now you're being silly and sentimental. And it makes you think, well, is the writing at that time just trying to produce, create this character of the pure intellect, and the others of the emotions, and the Doctor is just meant to be intellect and just like the very pragmatic,
stating the facts,
and
the non-emotive side.
Yeah, but it becomes very clear that the way the character is, that he is quite emotional. He can be affected. He can get his feathers ruffled quite easily. So he's not sort of impervious to having his own emotions stirred by what people do around him. Now this is something I've been sorry, I am listening to you. I was just scrolling through and I was trying to find Lost in Time, episode 1, The Enemies of Time. So where we meet those the Lasori people who who accuse the Doctor, well, it's a ruse, of course, as we know, of being an environmental terrorist by using a time ship and creating a whatever you call it, time spores and all that sort of thing, temporal flux or whatever. And someone has written, and neither of us have responded to this. But it says, and it was an edited, so I wonder what they wrote originally, but it says, I'm not sure if I buy the Doctor being this heroic before meeting Ian and Barbara. And I didn't know whether to answer this, and you haven't. That's not criticism of you, by the way. Because I thought, well, the Doctor has had, we know the Doctor had other adventures before he landed on Earth in 1963. And the backstories of explored in extended media or expanded media he got up to all sorts of things on Gallifrey when he was part of the Decca.
Mm.
Now, it depends how you define heroism. The Doctor is being pragmatic in Lost in Time 1. He's determined to do whatever it takes to get back to Susan.
Yeah.
That is his motivating factor. Now, you could say that was selfish. So a byproduct of him getting back to where he wants to be is actually saving the other time travelers who have been captured by the Lasuri. But I suppose the way it's been written, it could seem like he's showing more of a concern. But really, I think that came from Lady Vishala. He wants to put time vessels out of the reach of the Lasuri, the easiest thing to do rather than destroy them, which could create all sorts of problems. If you destroy a time ship, well, you're going to get temporal radiation and all sorts of problems. So you don't want to do that. So the easiest thing to do is send the ships away. So you might as well release the pilots and say, well, take your ships away and off you go. Maybe in that story, maybe that person's got a point that, the way it's been written, it could be seen that the Doctor is being a hero. But I think it's certainly the way I was looking at it was he was being pragmatic. What is the best way to stop these people? Which also helps himself because he's a time traveler. He wants to go back to Susan and he would do whatever it takes. So yeah, I don't know. I was a bit disappointed with that criticism. I'm not devastated by it, but it made me think, well, got to be careful in the writing that the Doctor has still got scope to learn to be a little bit more compassionate, because certainly in the world of Gallifrey, as we sort of now know it, is that they live in their lofty citadel, for hundreds upon hundreds of years, and sometimes nothing much happens. And, this is like, what did Brother Lassar say to the 10th Doctor? Dusty old senators, but you are something different. But the Doctor has to go through so much before he becomes the 10th Doctor, as we know. So the first Doctor, isn't a hero. He might not even be an anti-hero, but he tries to be pragmatic. He wants to get himself out of the problem that he's found himself in. And if the byproduct of that is something that looks like heroism, well, yeah, so be it. But, the Greek classical authors would have very clear ideas about what heroism is. So I would suggest that people read Aristotle. Anyway, there we go. Sorry, that was off the point slightly. But I'm just recognizing or acknowledging that it is very tricky and we might not always get it right, but it is our intention to try and create the authentic first Doctor and the authentic Susan.
Yeah. I think that's always the point. And there are some times where I do see the comments and I don't know how to quite respond. Because I don't want to tell people, I don't want to be dismissive, but also simultaneously, I'm not trying to, you don't want to turn around and go, you're right, we have messed up, because I feel like a lot of the decisions that have been taken in doing the first Doctor range and Overton Audios have been carefully thought through and considered. So there is a reason behind it, but also it's that same thing again. Everyone's got their idea of what it was like.
Yeah.
And that's always going to be the difficult thing, which is, I think the Doctor has had some heroism in there. I remember actually, I was thinking about this as you were talking about it, when Lady Vishala was talking to the first Doctor about, we've got to do this as well. The first Doctor actually says, we've not got time. But Lady Vishala says, well, I'm not helping you unless we do it. Like, she makes the Doctor actually help people, but he's actually just trying to help himself. So there are elements, like you say, like where the Doctor isn't selfless yet.
Yeah.
He's not at that point where he will go, I will sacrifice myself to save these strangers that I don't know. He's still very much, I have to do this. My goal is this. How do I do this? And if part of the goal is, like you say, if part of the goal is to help everyone, then he'll do it, but he won't be doing it entirely for them.
No.
He's
His
not.
main concern is saving Susan at all
Yeah.
costs.
Yeah, they are on the run. Susan is now by herself on Earth. She's very vulnerable to I suppose being intercepted by the Time Lords.
Yes.
I do sometimes think of a what if story as to like what if the Time Lords found the First Doctor and Susan. Like imagine like a what if scenario where for show and tell or something like that, like a kind of show and tell type thing, Susan just brings one of the Doctor's inventions. But it's enough of a rumble, you know?
Yeah.
That when she's walking back or something, you know, when it goes all in the War Games, it goes all slow motion. It's the Time Lords, like and all that. Like imagine the First Doctor and Susan having one of those moments. And I always wonder what that would have been like.
Indeed.
Because would it have been harsher punishment because it's so early? Like what could have happened? Would he have been exiled? Because by that point, obviously, when you look at the War Games, he's been obviously traveling a while. Susan is long gone. So there's a lot. It depends on the punishment, really. They just exile him because he's proven a point that there is evil to be fought. And he goes, okay, then they just say, okay, we can be on Earth and do that then. If they were to catch the First Doctor and Susan that early on, he's not even had the time to demonstrate that properly.
No.
I always wonder kind of what their decision would have been. Would it have been an exile? Would it have been death? Would it have been kind of like a prison cell?
Yeah. I think there are ways of even doing the what ifs, but keeping it in the main range that we're doing. Because as we know, time can be rewritten. Memories can be altered. All sorts of things can happen to characters, which sort of reset things. Wouldn't want to do that too often, because
well, obviously we've seen that with the recent Big Finish announcement that the actors from An Adventure in Space and Time are returning to their roles. You know, you've got David Bradley's First Doctor, Claudia Gironi. Was it Claudia? No, Claudia Gironi is the woman who does the painting cover arts on Big Finish. Claudia Grant, then isn't
That's
it?
Yeah.
Who plays Susan. And oh god, I should say for those listening that it is now 1 a.m.
Oh my goodness, yes it is.
we've been on a Zoom call for 3 hours. And my memory is failing me. But basically they are coming back to do a series.
Jamie somebody, isn't it?
Yes.
Jamie, the actor.
Yes, Jamie Glover.
That's it.
A lot of G's and surnames. But they are coming back to do what they've called a new vortex of or kind of splinter vortex. I don't know what they were saying actually. Like basically they're going to do stories that aren't connected to main continuity.
Right.
Which I think I talked to you about briefly when they announced it. I mean, I think it goes without saying they announced nearly yeah. Oh, I've got the names now. Claudia Grant, Jamie Glover, Gemma Powell.
Right.
Gemma Powell plays Barbara. I am not entirely sold on that whole idea of doing an Unbound era of the First Doctor, unless there's a particular reason. But if they're doing it so that they meet Daleks and Cybermen sooner, the whole like I don't know. I might not be so.
I think like that one that you introduced me to, where I was a First Doctor on what was it, that Dalek Invasion. What was the channel? It wasn't TT Productions, was it? No, it was Doctor Who Expanded Multiverse.
Yeah, that's it. Where you played see that was an interesting one because you were reciting lines from a televised story.
Yes.
It wasn't like what we're doing at the moment, where we're
No.
looking at the unexplored areas. You
Mm.
were saying lines that were direct quote, and that's what was really fascinating to me, because I sort of saw that as that's kind of a bit like a screen test in a way of going, could we do that one day? Could we make adaptations of stories, or could we do stories set in that era?
Mm.
Because obviously that also starred Jaspreet Singh playing Ian, Abby Louise as Barbara, even though she had the one line, and then of course we still cast Chelsea Lagan as Susan in that.
Yeah.
I think it was a good tester to see where we could go with it, and good to give notes and go, okay, maybe if we tried doing that, we could make it work one day, but we don't know. Again, it's still very early for us. We're still very far in the origins of the first Doctor and Susan, that of course it's fun to explore and the idea of it. But so far we're making one volume a year currently. And in that regard, we've got a couple of years yet, I'd say, probably more, before we're even remotely looking into that sort of prospect.
Yeah.
But no, it's all looking good. I think the future is still looking bright for what we're doing with First Doctor. And obviously what we've done so far, I'm immensely proud of, and I'm in awe of all your writing talents to make sure that this works as much as possible.
Thank you. That's kind.
But it is 1 a.m.
It is.
So I feel, because I've still got work tomorrow. So I feel like we should start wrapping up, if not just wrap it up now, so that we make sure that we slumber. But no, thank you so much, Michael, for making yourself available this evening to talk about First Doctor, whether it be the volumes we make, the series itself, or Unbound stuff. Like we've covered all ground, I think, in this.
Indeed, yeah.
But yes, once again, thank you so much, and I shall, I suppose, return to myself in the future, probably when I'm more awake. And welcome back to the podcast. I'm here still with sweet Daniel.
Oh, you flatter me, sir. Very interesting conversation indeed. And
yes, indeed. I don't know. Can you hear birds behind me at all?
Sorry for the quietness, folks. I'm also trying to listen back. I'm sorry, I can't hear anything.
I've had pigeons living on my balcony for the past 2.5 months.
Oh.
And I looked up, and apparently it's illegal to move them, because they're the wildlife.
Yes.
The reason I ask, and I'm going to quickly turn around for a second to see why they're making all that noise. See, this is a difficult thing, right?
Yeah.
They had a baby.
Oh.
I don't know where the baby's gone.
Oh.
I kept the blind down because whenever they were, sitting on the egg, whenever they were sitting on the egg, every time I'd open the blinds, they'd freak out and fly off and leave the eggs. And I'm like, oh God, I was worried that, they wouldn't be sitting on the eggs enough to let the birds grow.
Yeah.
That I was just, I'll leave the blind down so I didn't disturb them. I opened it for the first time in about a month today, covered in bird poo, this balcony now.
Lovely.
But I have been hearing them making lots of noises. I did peek through and see the little baby pigeon a few times. I've opened it today, and I've only seen the mother and the father. I do not know where the child is. And it makes me very, very worried.
It is very hard to keep things upbeat for these podcasts when you say stuff like that, chatters.
Indeed. But I don't know when they're going to go, because I need them to go so I can clean. I have to clean my balcony at some point. I have to do it.
Yeah.
I don't want to move them forcibly. It's been nearly 3 months of this. I need my balcony back. I can't have air circulation in my flat whilst they're there, because then they keep walking towards the door to come in. And when they're in here, they're in here. I'm just like, I'm not letting, get out. But I don't want them pooping all over the place and trying to force remove them from an apartment. There's probably a law against that as well. I've had to keep the door closed, and they're making tons of noise behind me, and I always assumed it was the baby. There is no baby here, so I don't know where on earth this little one is. But anyway,
Yeah.
anyway,
Going to the comments reading, so
yes, indeed. So we've obviously, still going to be reading things. Just we've left things a little bit longer because people, as we was talking about what we've learned last month, people have lives, and they take a bit longer to catch up. So I'll be reading him for Torchwood Clandestine. However, we want to leave it also a month for the comments and reactions to come in for the reveal of who the philosophical doctor is.
Exactly, yes. And so we've had the reveal has been up for now just over a month. Yeah, just over a month the past day. So I want to go through the comments and discuss people's reaction to the new doctor, and let's do that, shall we?
Hooray!
So first comment is from Marco Art WY6HQ. Just found this channel, absolutely love it. Can't wait to see more. Yeah, we're very excited to get some more philosophical. The main thing is they're very hyped for the philosophical adventures now.
Hooray! That's good.
That is very good. We also have Eclipse.mp4, very realistic guitar small. I thought it was a real box until I saw the Q&A. Yep, I'm glad everyone liked the box. And we have Apollo Banron. Well done. Looking forward to more. We have Doctor Who Fan Man. I love that. And the cat badge. Yes, the cat badge. Did you like the cat badge, Chatters? As a lover of felines, did you appreciate it?
I did.
Yay. Then we got MMGR Junior. I think that's from a guy called Mikey. Is it a bi-generation this time or regeneration this time for the story, for the message for Daniel J. Patton? I think they're asking me, is it going to be a bi-generation or is it going to be a traditional regeneration from Irish to Phil? We call philosophical Phil.
Yes.
But I can confirm neither or and both, because I'm not confirming if there's going to be a bi-generation or not.
Yeah.
And the Master DD already love this new Doctor. We love them as well. Then the next one is the Lost Sub-Rosian.
Yeah.
I think so. It looks it's looking like what the 15th Doctor could have been, fighting Daleks and being more traditional instead of dancing with goblins and space stations full of babies chasing snots.
Did you read the response?
And then Christ on bike people.
I read that and then you started reading it. I was like, oh wow, that's a choice.
We're not going to dig into that, but
yeah.
man, I love the 15th Doctor, and I like the dancing with the goblins.
Oh yeah, series 1's over, isn't it? We need to talk about that later. Anyway,
we'll talk about that later. Yeah. Then we have Diamonds Finder, with a Z for diamonds, which is cool. Well, I've just discovered this channel, and I have to say I'm very excited by this, and also I love the shoelaces. Yes, the shoelaces have definitely become the biggest feature of the philosophical costume. And I think we talked about this. They weren't originally meant to be Jackie's shoes for the day. Because it was raining, they just brought a bigger pair of boots to prepare for the rain. But then the rainbow laces became such an iconic feature of their costume that we just had to keep it.
Yeah.
I love that. We have Charlie Slay 7718 saying love the sonic screwdriver design.
Oh.
And then we have say I love it. That's exactly what I want. There's someone commenting, that's exactly what I want for 15s.
Okay, everyone's comparing this.
Yeah, we don't want comparisons. Can we not just have something completely different? Right. We have, I think that's Graham Collins, 1649. If you were the Doctor, I'd watch your adventures. Hope you do more of these fan-made films. That was a good beginning. And oh, well done, Jackie Smith.
Yeah.
With clapping. Yeah, it's going mostly audios. Go forward for Jackie, as we said before, but maybe a few wee odd minisodes. We'll see. Then we have Peter writing things, just saying cat badge.
Of course, you can't forget it.
Cat badge. We have Time Bound Studios, and they're saying, I love that costume. Thank you. Unknown Editor 63 saying awesome. We have Film Storm Studios 8571 saying amazing, or should I say stellar. I can't wait to see their take on the Doctor. Thank you very much. And we have yes, Mikey. I think I might need your help with this username, my friend.
Oh God. Mickey Horvath.
Mickey Horvath. I'm so sorry for butchering that name. I'm saying they're saying I am fully hyped up. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then we have Denial AEP, which if no one knows that AEP is the file name for After Effects. So yes, the effects as well might need work recoloring. No.
Oh, criticism.
Yeah, criticism, but to be fair, valid one. Might work on. I'll look into that. And then we have the Rainbow Hooves show. Is that right? Rainbow Hooves.
Yep.
It's far from being all over.
Oh.
Then we have the Master DD. I think they already posted something, but they're saying again, hyped.
That's good.
Thank you very much for everyone's comments, and yeah, everyone's just seems to be on the same consensus. Everyone's very excited for Jackie's portrayal as a Doctor, and we're very excited to bring them aboard to Prism.
Indeed, indeed, and we're all very much looking forward to it. We are.
Indeed, sir, indeed. But you also now want to do the comments reading for Torchwood Clandestine Part 1.
Indeed, the volume that took forever to come out.
Yeah, and it's still coming out.
Yep, Part 1 is out. Oh, Part 1 of the volume. Right, anyway.
And counting.
Indeed. So we start with a comment from Michael Cox, otherwise known as Dr. Ruddy Vivas, saying, well, you are certainly faithful to the Torchwood profile as sci-fi with adult themes. Really quite a lot to take in and process. I like the fact that you tied together the alien threat and the backstory of these characters using guilt and regret to revisit the past. It helps to embed the story in a compelling and emotionally charged setting. Excellent performances from the cast, a strong start to this volume. Yeah, this is one of the more, well, I don't want to say controversial. It certainly got heavier subjects.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it has.
I feel the themes were dealt with very tastefully. I think nothing was done into any offensive manner. But I think, well, making this audio, I think we all could tell we were best to put a warning at the beginning.
Yes, because even though it touches on something that's very important to talk about, it is also an experience that too many people have had to go through, and it's always worth putting that disclaimer on to warn people of what's coming.
Yeah, but to be fair, that's what sort of Torchwood does, or touches on the darker sides of humanity a lot more. But sometimes it can touch on things that are a bit too real. So
yeah, exactly.
Well, I think this is a great story. It was definitely the right decision to put a warning at the beginning.
Yes. Yes. And then we have another comment from Jeevan John, who says, an absolutely amazing episode to kick off this volume with. The characters were all excellent, and the backstories of Chris and Tommy regarding their sexualities were especially insightful and compelling. I'm very eager to see where this volume will lead and to its conclusion. And then we have another comment from Eclipse.mp4. Is there anywhere that I could contact Daniel J. Patton for a cover, like maybe on Discord or email?
I have a Instagram. It's my public Instagram account I use for my cover making. You can commission me there.
Oh, we'll move on to episode 2.
Just to plug it in.
We move on to episode 2 with Playdate. Comment from Michael Cox, okay, Dr. Redivivus. Oh, bloody hell, I've messed that up immediately. An interdimensional slide leading to the dwelling of a creepy doll-like creature that consumes the living. Yes, that certainly gives me the shivers. Truly top-notch Torchwood. Nice to see you exploring Lizzie's recovery and how that impacts on work and relationships.
And somebody else commented called YW2324 saying, "This is the first one I'm listening to, and it should be interesting, and I'm excited. I've not watched Torchwood, but know enough about it not to be confused." Well, I hope you liked it. You commented before you watched it, so I hope that you enjoyed it.
I am very confused.
Then we have a comment from Jeev and John saying, "Another absolutely amazing episode of this volume. It was incredible seeing Lizzie taking charge in this episode and going on a mission of her own to prove the rest of the team that she's fully capable of doing this after she'd woken up from that coma. Laurie's performance as Lizzie is absolutely electrifying, and her dynamic between all the characters in the story was amazing, especially Tommy, which I found especially hilarious, with it going from her bribing him with a movie and ice cream to her threatening him. The creep factor was also absolutely amazing in this episode, and the child actors in this episode gave an incredible performance. I absolutely adore how the team are looking out for Lizzie and do care for her dearly ever since what happened to her. But I also really love how Lizzie acknowledges this, but stands firm about the fact that she is capable to do the heavy world-ending stuff. Overall, it was an amazing story with a great premise, along with an amazing creepy atmosphere, which I have to say was beautifully edited together by Abby Louise. P.S. I hope my boy Jack gets out of prison. I feel bad for what he had to go through in this episode." And then the response comment was Abby actually responding, going, "Thank you so much. This was a fun edit to do." See, that's the thing as well. I'm glad that it got acknowledged that it wasn't me who edited it.
Yeah, exactly.
There have been quite a few audios that have come out that that I haven't edited that don't recognize that.
Yeah, you got Aiden as well. Aiden's become sort of a regular editor for you as well recently as well.
I've given him a break because he was working on Burgundy Doctor stuff for the Dwem stuff. But he edited something for the 13th Doctor Adventures, and then he edited an episode of the Northern Doctor Adventures. But yeah, I probably will be asking him to edit something else soon, to be honest with you. But who knows?
No.
Anyway, we move on to episode 3 called Regression by Yuan the Blue, who says, "I certainly did not anticipate the twists and turns that this chapter took. Well done." And another comment from Michael Cox saying, "When the story began with the Slothesian / Adelian, I assumed that we were just having a moment of comic respite before moving into the usual harrowing business of Torchwood life. However, it actually serves as the foundation of this hard-hitting episode, with jeopardy very much center stage and a race against time. The use of neurotoxin in the first episode offers some useful parallels to what we have here, and I'm reminded a little of the Five Doctors, when the Fifth Doctor remarks that a man is a sum of his memories. Excellent performances from the cast, and it's always great to have an appearance from Nidrak."
I mean, I think even Sun said this was like in terms of the production wise, this was the first story to have Nidrak appear.
Regression got written a long time ago.
Yeah.
It's been recording for longer as well. But yeah, this was the first I ever saw that had Nidrak in it. It was originally just a bunch of random aliens that they called themselves the Infidels. And then we changed it to have Mr. Wedges as like a little alien shopkeeper, followed by him having traded stuff with Nidrak before. So it was a nice little way to have him in it. So then we have one last comment on episode 3 from Jeevan John saying, "Another absolutely outstanding episode of Torchwood Clandestine. The story was absolutely beautiful and it was written amazingly by Eamon Longman and James Sutton. Talking of James, his performance as Fraser was incredible, and it was also incredible hearing his persona changed as he shifted backwards throughout his life due to the brain regression. The rest of the Torchwood team were absolutely brilliant throughout this story, and it was very interesting to hear them working without having Fraser about, and with Jack Field alongside them, which was especially lovely, as I absolutely adored a heart-to-heart that he and Lizzie had. It was very moving and almost moved me to tears. The ending of this story was very interesting. I can't wait to see how Hannah Starr will play into this volume, as she seems to have some unfinished business with Fraser, which is very interesting. Overall, this was an incredible listen, and I cannot wait for the rest of the episode and the eventual conclusion of all the storylines to this volume." Now, here's an interesting thing. In that comment, Jeevan says that Hannah Starr has some unfinished business with Fraser, and I know that he's talking about the ending of episode 3.
Yeah.
That wasn't Hannah Starr.
Who was that? Oh.
Spoilers.
Oh. I think I get what you mean. Yeah.
Moving on to episode 4, which was called Mother. This one was the most different episode as well because it didn't have any of the Torchwood team. It was purely a standalone story about a mother and son.
Yeah, I got confused with this one because when I was asked to make the cover art, and I was like, okay, I'll put Laurie, I'll put Tommy in there, and then I was usually when we make the covers, I make the cover, and then when putting the text is okay, who are the top 6 build actors, and then I was like, okay, do you mean to put the top 3 and the bottom 3? And then I was like, no. So
Yeah.
I was very confused.
Yeah, usually you're expecting James Sutton, Ben Walden, Laurie McClelland, Ollie Hatton, James York, Abby Louise, and then it really started off with Dexter Harris, Kath Meal, and you're like, hang on, what?
Yeah. I think is I know Abby has become a regular now, so I thought maybe this is Abby taking over, but it just became very. It was just very weird because I was just got very confused at making of this one.
Yeah, but it was a nice change.
It was, yeah.
So the comment said, this was a comment from Stooky's Everything 6153. It says, this is one of not the what? This is one of, if not the best one I've ever heard. This is truly amazing. Then Michael Cox says, an impressive piece which takes the time to build the characters and relationships between the 2 main characters so that we can be truly invested in their respective fates. Superb performances from Kath Meal and Dexter Harris. Then a comment from James Leaper Lone Wolf Audio Works, who says, whoa, talk about playing with the emotional heartstrings. Very good episode, very creepy. The tone of the story is good, the voice acting is superb, and the mixing and sound design is fantastic. Great job. I cannot wait for the next one. Yuan the Blue said, excellent build-up of a small but loving family, which made the ending all the more heartbreaking. Also unsure what Father Malcolm is up to now, but all we can do is wait and see. And that is true. That's all you can do. Wait and see.
Oh, sir.
I can confirm that, as we've now read the comments, I'll say when Clandestine Part 2 will be out. We're actually still recording it. Half of the volume is actually fully recorded, and we've got one of the episodes kind of assembly edited. Abby's edited one of them. And it's about an hour long.
Yeah.
That episode. It's a big one. It's a big one. But we're working on that, and we're aiming for a December release on that. I know that seems like a while away, but these episodes take a lot of time to put together. There's a big cast, very in terms of
scripts,
very big scripts, but also the storylines need time. That's how we've got this so layered. It's because it takes time to do it.
Exactly. Yeah.
But that'll be out December. It's already kind of halfway kind of done. I need to find an editor really to edit the first episode because Abby edited the second one. But yeah, no, it's all coming up really, really well at the moment. And yeah, we can expect Clandestine 2 and its final conclusion for the Clandestine storyline in Christmas time. We will, however, have a little live action minisode in the gap.
Is that the one I filmed?
Yes.
Ooh, very nice.
And Daniel J. Patton himself.
Yes, I got to direct a bit of Torchwood whilst James Sutton was over. It's the first one where we get to see Fraser and Lizzie together in live action.
Indeed.
So it's very exciting.
Yeah, it's filmed at the same time as roughly you were filming the Fractured Timeline stuff for him as well.
We had a bit of a production hiccup, but we adapted. But we'll explain more when the episode comes out.
Indeed, we will. So, in that case, then, shall we have a look to the Toverton exclusive, which is a TT Productions release that has been re-released on SoundCloud, on Overton Audios as part of the TT Productions and Overton Audios crossover on the SoundCloud account. A little exclusive thing to promote it. So this is about a TT historical original audio drama called The MatchGirls of Bow. Are you ready, Daniel?
I'm ready, Chaddis.
Let's go!
You're late.
With very good reason, Herbert.
Oh, don't say you've been people watching those match girls again, Annie.
If I can speak to some of these girls.
They are poor, working to the bone. No wonder they look like they need your concern.
Yes, but there is working, and there is working. The link. Is it not meant to be a journal for the servants of men?
Oh, fine.
If not for the people of London, it's for those match girls.
No. Got it. Leave meeting. And leave meeting.
I shall leave.
Hello and welcome to Behind the Duvalier. That's what we're calling it now.
The Duvalier.
The Duvalier, darlings. Behind the Duvet with me, James. We are with the cast. And yes, we are with the cast. We are with the cast of MatchGirls of Bow. So let's introduce, obviously, we have Abby. You may go first.
Hello, I'm Abby Louise. I wrote, produced, and I play Sarah Chapman in MatchGirls of Bow.
Amy.
Hi guys, I'm Amy Saffret and I play Annie Besant.
Strax.
I am Strax. I was a couple of people, I can't remember their names, and I was the director.
Ooh.
I can't remember.
I was about to, Mr. Connor.
Hello, I'm Colin Chadwick and I play Mr. Bryant and Mr. Law.
We've nicked him from Overton.
Yeah.
Tiny. Chelsea, sorry.
Hello, it's me, Innie. Hello, I am Chelsea Lagan, and I was the executive producer for the MatchGirls of Bow, and I also played Kitty Duffy. He has less fingers.
Last but no means least, Mr. Jimmy.
I am Jimmy Wolfe, and I played Herbert Burrows. I was also the Doctor, not for that one. And I was also Charles, somebody or other, an MP.
Yeah.
Oh, Charles. Yes, hello.
Yeah, it was Mr. Posh Charles.
Mr. Posh Charles.
He was very, very drunk.
It's a good day in Parliament, what?
Good day in Parliament. So, Abby, So give us kind of a little bit of a backstory to sort of the Match Girls and kind of what kind of inspired you to sort of do this audio?
Right. So this all kind of escalated from Jenny Flint, surprise, surprise, who is a Doctor Who character. Shock, horror, I know, right? But gasp, when I was doing the research into her character, all it said in her character like backstory was Jenny was a match girl. And then my personal fascination with the Match Girls stuff kind of escalated from there. Yeah, so Before Vastra 1 was basically where this obsession started, and now, yay, Match Girls.
Up the mattress.
Up the mattress.
Up the Match Girls. So with that, did you do, obviously, how much research did you have to sort of do to really get the story? And like, was it easy to adapt such it's quite an unknown event in history, even though it's a very important event, it's quite unknown. So was it quite easy to put it into a dramatic form?
So what I did was, so the whole thing is about this like starter article in the link pamphlet. And so basically I got this article and then broke it down into characters, and then just went out from there. Like, there's an incident with the whole Kitty has a line where she's talking about like going for jam and stuff, jam on toast and drinking buckets of tea, and that's in the article. And the incident with Kath where she nearly loses her fingers, that's also in the article, as is the whole Kitty actually losing her fingers. So I kind of got this one article and broke it up into random people that never actually existed. There are some people that actually were part of the Match Girl strike, but I kind of like integrated them in with made up people. But yeah, like key events I've distributed between not real life people to basically.
How does it feel going from, because the recent sort of big historical that we did beforehand was R101. How did you feel about going from R101 to Match Girls?
This one's definitely more closer to my heart. Both of the incidents aren't very well known throughout history, but I feel like this one's more significant. Purely because, as I was saying to you lot earlier, like everybody knows what a suffragette is. Everybody knows about the suffragette movement. But that was like 20 years after this. And yet this is like a band of women like getting together. And then after this, there was like dockyard strikes and all this stuff. So it's kind of like a domino effect from here of people going, we're not being treated right. And it's kind of like the start of like health and safety in the workplace in a way. There's like little things that we take for granted that we wouldn't even think about now. It's like having a place to have your lunch. That's not, especially when you're in a factory. I get that it's different in like an office space. That's a completely different scenario. But if you're at machinery, you'd expect to like down tools and go for some lunch or whatever. But they never used to do that. And obviously, because the place where they were eating was basically surrounded by chemicals and poisonous substances, they were ingesting them. They were just making them 10 times worse than what they needed to be, you know? Health and safety stuff.
So, yeah, it's quite interesting with that it's, again, when you think of Victorian factories and you don't necessarily sometimes hear, you hear the horrors, but you don't necessarily hear like there wasn't any rights back in the days for factory
there is
workers.
there is a line in it as well where they're on about children in mills having injuries and stuff, and all that was raised and sorted prior to this. So I get that like the kids were seen before this, which makes complete and utter sense, but it was that kind of like triggered all the rest of it. It's like, well, it's okay. Like you know that it's not okay for that kid to be in danger in the mills. However, you're okay with this like 16-year-old girl sat there with her face falling off. That's perfectly fine. Like it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Amy.
Yes.
How does it feel? This is your first non-Who, I want to say, or like sort of like is non-Who?
No, I think I've done. I think it's my second, third non-Who.
Okay.
I'm in a part of Touched, and also I was a part of the Penny Dreadful series.
Oh, nice. How did sort of that compare from your previous experience to this one?
This one, I've got to agree with Abby. When I was approached to take part and did my research, it touches a nerve and it gets very, very close to home. With the other ones I've been a part of, the characters have been very free. And with Annie, she's one of the few characters that are there. She is real. You can look her up, you can find her pictures, and talk about, the social reform she was involved in and all this. So personally for me, it was quite nerve-wracking because obviously I wanted to make sure, very similar to way back when I was in Before Vastra, when I had the Ripper victim Annie Chapman, I wanted to make sure that I was bringing off enough, be able to do them justice, because there was this kind of riding of this person was real. We know that they existed. Basically, don't screw this up, kind of thing. But thankfully, Abby sent some like amazing footage over of the match girls talking and things like that. And I did my own research and found out how much Annie was not only involved in obviously getting the match girls to talk, but she got involved in the school board, making sure that the kids had preschool dinners, their bodies were all checked by medical exams, things like this.
Honestly, you could do an audio that was just about Annie Besset in her own right.
Yeah, because she like Abby said, she had such a mind which was advanced ideas for the time. So the idea of a national education for the kids, the women's votes, this was kind of that catalyst of having it all rolling. And then, as Abby said, 20 something years later, we had the suffragettes and we had Emmeline Pankhurst then appeared and all this, and her idea of trade unions and things like this. And it's just fascinating because then not only did she do it here, but she then went to India and helped to promote Indian self-rule and to get the British Empire out. She got put under house arrest for it while she was out there. But this idea of, Irish nationalism, the Indian Free State and things like this, she was like a powerhouse. And she was quite a petite woman.
She was like 5 foot, yeah.
Yeah, she was like what we call like the Tinkerbell. She was just this tiny petite woman. She wasn't heavy framed or anything like this. But my God, she had some welly to her. And it was just amazing to kind of give not only Annie, but this story the opportunity to be open because, as we've been chatting before, and as you said yourself, James, not many people know about the match strike. People may know about the dockyard workers, the children in the mills before, but then this big march and everything got overshadowed by a serial killer that happened. What was it? Maybe about 3 or 4 months later. So it kind of got swept under the carpet a bit. And then all of a sudden, when the suffragette movement and all that kicked in, everyone was like, oh, yeah, this is it. Without the realization of about 20, 30 years beforehand, actually, to make a symbol, the match was lit about 20, 30 years ago by these girls going, we're not having this anymore. I'm done with being fined for dirty feet. I'm not risking losing limbs for the sake of pittance that I can hardly get bread and cheese with. So to be able to bring this out and to help the memorial and getting the donations and that, it's really touched it. It really has.
Yeah. It's really, again, like the flames, and I think this is quite an inspiring story.
Oh yeah,
and I think it's definitely really, it's definitely something that I think looking at history, I think it should be taught. I think these kind of sort of moments in history should be taught in schools, because it shows what community can do. So
I would wholeheartedly agree with that. They teach about the mill conditions and during the Industrial Revolution and all this. They talk about the working conditions on the mills and things like this. I think that there should be an extra module or some way in there of the match girls being in there. Brian and May, the atrocities not only of living in the houses with the kids, but these young girls as well, who are literally hand to mouth just about. And it needs to be. Couldn't agree with you more that this needs to be out more.
Well said. Yes, yes.
Up the matches.
Up the matches.
Amy for Prime Minister.
I'm getting quite emotional.
When I become Prime Minister, that's it. It'll come into mainstream education. That's it. That's it. From primary and then into GCSE history. That's it.
Lovely.
There will be a whole subject. There'll be a whole module on the match girls and the catalyst into the women's rights and everything.
Excellent. Mr. Barrett.
That's you.
That is you.
Yes, that is me.
Yes.
Deep in
What do you want?
But I want to ask you a question, if that's all right.
Yes.
Gosh, you've directed something and it's gone straight to your head. Now, speaking of,
Oh, sorry, darling. Talk to my agent. Oh, I'm far too
darling,
popular.
darling, sweetie, darling, I'll send a
Oh,
bottle of
what?
orange. What? So how was it directing
Oh,
Match
it was
Girls?
awful. They just didn't listen. And it was kept going into sticker. It was absolute
I
dial.
don't know what you mean. In it.
I didn't really have to. I didn't really have. I've had a wine, so apologies. I didn't really have to direct much. It was more sort of sit and listen. And at one point, I think I got so enthralled, I forgot I was directing.
I think we all do that on occasion.
I think it was because a lot of us, when we were like acting, we were so emotionally invested that we didn't really need too much direction.
Say, oh, that was shit, or you need to redo that. It was, first thing I've directed, probably the first big thing.
I think it is your first time directing,
First
and
venture into the director role.
You've joined the club.
You tick a box now.
I can tick a box. Yeah, it was fun to sort of sit back and kind of listen to all the different characters popping up and just someone else doing Mr. Bryant. For reasons. This wasn't me.
That was so weird. That was the weirdest
It was
thing.
weird.
That was weird for me because I'm like, not how I would have done it, but that's fictional, Mr. Bryant, not actual Mr. Bryant.
There's two Mr.
correct. Well,
there's two Mr. Bryants on TT, and there's fictional Mr. Bryant, who is not a very nice man, and there's actual Mr. Bryant, who's also not a very nice man, but they're both completely different.
Nicer than my version of Mr.
It's true, yeah.
Yours, Matt, is just a complete scumbag.
Yes,
and that's probably to put it politely.
That is putting it very politely. I tell you what was like. I know we recorded it, but obviously, once listening back to it, the bit where is it Kitty loses her fingers?
Yeah.
Hello.
Oh, I felt that.
Yeah.
No,
I felt
I
extremely
completely forgot.
uncomfortable listening to that.
I completely forgot that it always happens. It always happens, and I was like,
music.
And then I think I was just like,
yeah, I'm not
the
sure about
music.
anybody else,
The
but
music was
I know.
perfect.
Oh, that was
also,
fantastic.
Jed is absolutely fantastic when it comes to music. Like, he just gets the tension and the atmosphere and everything about the scene just absolutely perfect. Like, I don't think a scene would be the same without his music a lot of the time, I swear.
And I think
So
also
good.
with that, it was very good acting on your half, Chelsea, as well. The music and everything. The music can only do so much, but if you can't put that convincing over, it's not going to sell.
I still have this image in my head though of Kath's character just being like, "You'll be fine," and like Chelsea stood there, her hand is just like completely immobulated.
You can almost visually see the panic in her eyes.
I think that's like one of the scenes that like I've had this like experience like before type thing where it was not getting my fingers cut off, but like acting in PA.
Gave birth.
Yeah, I gave birth, and that was hard enough to do as it is. And again, I had my microphone, and I had to stand at the other side of the room. The same with this one is just standing at the other side of the room, listening to everybody in my earpods and being like,
hoping that nobody walks in and you're screaming.
But the thing is, I never do. Like, I never usually act out a scene like in the rehearsals or whatever. I'll just be like, my fingers, because I kind of just leave it to a one take thing. Because for me, I always say that if you
some of that you need,
especially
we found that works better though a lot of the time. Didn't we?
Yeah, because you won't get the same feeling and you won't get the same reaction as you do the first time you do it. So I never like whenever it comes to a scene like that, especially with like a screaming scene or anything like that, I never do it when in the rehearsal, and I'll never go through a first thing of it like a second round of it. I always do it then and there, and usually it works in my favor and comes out kind of like the best one. So like I'm glad that people enjoyed it, but I just seen people's faces being like, "Oh
Did
no!"
you notice the noise when she pulled the fingers out?
Yeah,
that's how I was just like, "Ooh."
That was not pretty.
Abby Louise
Connor's
catches
face,
the gore.
Literally, I watched Connor's faces that happened. You could just see Connor go.
It's like, oh, that sounds
Well,
too
gee.
realistic.
Ouchie.
Yeah. So Chelsea, with that, I mean, obviously, what was it also like being executive producer?
I absolutely loved every minute of it. No, honestly, it's like I'm not just I like Strax said, like, see, you're just sitting there listening to everybody and you're like, yeah, that's good. And then after you record, Abby's like, is everyone happy? Everyone happy? And like the director and all says, aye. I'm sitting there like, that was basic. He's like, Chelsea. I'm like, oh yes, I'm happy, yes. Like you completely get stuck within the story of it, and you get literally you're dropping off every single scene that's there because you're just like you're so in the moment of it. And when the characters just go and perform, and you do them scenes that only take like one take of doing, and you don't have to do a wee rehearsal beforehand, it just comes off naturally. You literally get stuck in the moment. But I have to say, like, the cast that we got, we are very lucky, and we have newcomers that are coming into like this project as well. And honestly, I couldn't imagine doing this project with anybody else, because everybody that's been here and done this story is absolutely fantastic and played the most fantastic that they could with the characters that they were given. They done their research. They've done all their different things, and like just bringing those characters, even though they are real people, but bringing them to life as well, and giving them a personality. And it's just absolutely, it's phenomenal seeing people grow.
So I tried character-wise, I tried to do kind of a mixture between actual people and like fictional people, and I think, fingers crossed, I've written them so similar that you kind of struggle to see which ones are made up and which ones are actual.
They all have their own personality,
people.
They all have their own personality, but it's like a believable personality, so it doesn't seem like an over-the-top person. But you can, and I've always said this, in everything that Abby writes or creates, you can literally, if you closed your eyes, you can literally picture the surroundings and picture the scene happening as if it was like a movie right in front of you. Like you can picture like them coming out the door, one of the characters running off with the book. You can see her fucking scooting off, and everybody laughing with her. No, you can imagine all of these scenes going on in your head, and it's the same whenever you're recording it as well. You can see all these scenes happening, like it's all pictured like crystal clear right in front of you, and you know exactly the tone of everything. And it's just absolutely incredible to see just people immersing themselves deep in the story, and like getting all emotional and everything towards the end and everything. You gotta love it. I absolutely love it. Yes.
Brilliant. Yeah, fantastic. Well, we're gonna go to the dark side now for his villain TT debut, Connor. For those who do not know, Connor is such a lovely person.
He's a big cuddly teddy bear.
He's a big teddy bear. What was it like playing a villain?
I quite enjoy it because I've not got that kind of natural personality that when it's like, you kind of get the option to play a bit of chaos without knowing there's actual consequences sometimes. I don't know why I keep being written to say harsh things to Chelsea in every production. That was the DOS house owner in Molly 2. Did that separately.
I'm not very nice when it comes to casting.
No, I did that one as a separate recording, and I didn't realise who I was talking to until the premiere, and I was like, oh,
I know, I didn't even realise until
I'll say this though. So, like we mentioned previous, we've had a Mr. B and a Mr. Brian in two kind of sections of TT, and both of them play evil bastards. However, they are the nicest, kindest humans in real life you will ever meet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was about to say that's a running theme. But no, I really really
It's Abby's
enjoyed it.
running theme. Get the nicest person to be that.
Hello,
That's
you're
the most-
The
nice.
nicest, tallest people.
And you've
The
got to be
nicest,
tall
tallest.
but nice, yeah.
To like basically the BFG, like
Yeah.
you've got to be basically be that to
Big
play a
Freddy
nasty
Jive
villain.
playing the nastiest person in
Can I
the
say
world.
this though? And I'm gonna big Chadders up right now. You absolutely smashed this role, darling.
You did.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Great
I was-
Chudders.
Oh. I got to play a nice person as well, I think, Mr. Law. He was on the good side at least. So I got to play a nice bit of a balance. But no, it was fun. It was very fun. And I really like the sort of community element that was felt when we were recording. We were still able to have a laugh and joke about things. And even during the read through, you know, when there was some cast members who couldn't make for the read through, we had obviously Chelsea being a sticker for some of them and everything like that. That was
Here,
great.
anytime there's an opportunity, sticker comes out.
Teddy.
Yeah, and
That's
that-
Whatever sticker can be used, she's there.
She is there.
It's just a nice thing because obviously what's being made is something historically accurate and thus is not always happy, and we're still able to keep the mood happy, work together, and still be really positive and make something really nice. So, I mean, we listen to it and we're just like, oh, when we're listening to it, but like we've got the happy memories of making it as well, and hearing edits and stuff like that. So it's been really nice. Yeah.
Lovely. Jimmy.
Hello.
Jimmy.
Hello. Jimmy. Yeah, Jim. Hi. What is again about? Cut this out a bit. What was it like playing your characters? How did you sort of prepare to sort of play this role?
I'll be honest.
Roles?
I didn't do much research, if any, just purely because I didn't know. I was one of those people. I think I'd heard of the Match Girls and things like that, and I knew there was strikes and things, but I didn't really know anything about it. And I didn't really necessarily want to go too much into the fact, because I thought if I immerse myself more in the fact of it, I'm going to lose some of the drama. And I think this felt like one of those things that I knew that Abby would have covered the fact side of things. So it's kind of like I didn't feel like I necessarily needed to know it, because I figured if you're going to tell this story, you want it to be a story that people remember. So you need to have the drama in there. And I think it's, I wanted to go into it with an approach of someone who was new to the story. So I was sort of learning about it as I was listening to it. So it kind of sort of, in that sense, put me as both performer and audience, if you see what I mean. And it gave me an idea of the kind of way to present that story to the audience, because obviously you've got Herbert Burrows in there, who's a fantastic character to play. He's
an actual person.
I was going to say he's one of the few actual people that I did look up afterwards, and it was quite interesting. He's not how I pictured him at all either. In my head, I pictured him as quite an old sort of man, big mutton chops, top hat sort of thing. But he was quite a young fellow. I didn't realize he was quite that young, but I liked it as well, because it was the thing that struck me about him. And again, as someone who didn't really know a huge amount about it, it struck me as he was one of those people that you're looking at and think, like, for a man at that time to be concerned about social change and activities, specifically for women as well, it was quite a sort of, it's quite a sort of interesting position for him to be in, because he's sort of, where you'd have most men were probably the ones who were in charge and didn't care. To have those people in there that did care, I think it's quite good to have, to make people aware of who those characters are. But at the same time, it's sort of, you need to also make it sure that these characters are the people that stood behind the women. The women were the ones that they were there to do the change. It was kind of like these were. I got the feeling from the way it was written, he was the kind of man who would be the person he would be the person to do something, i.e. in this case, put it in the magazine, but in a way of him saying, I am the conduit for what these women have to say. I am a small cog in their machine, kind of thing. So it was very much sort of that, you want to sort of keep that sense of reverence in it, because again, it's not about characters like him, it's about the people that it's also about. And then obviously other people, like you had again the MP, you kind of just I don't know what, I think I just did general posh generic man for that.
Oh, yes. Posh generic man.
Yeah, but at the same time, it was kind of like, again, you know, I thought, well, MP, he's a, you know, somebody who's a bit posh. These are, you know, people who would necessarily be probably regarded back then as common folk. So I just, again, I don't want to put too much characterization into people like that, because the story's not about them. It's more about the people that are actually being talked about and things like that. So and then the Doctor was just the Doctor. I think I put a little bit more evil into him because he is cutting off somebody's hand, but slightly less
Poor
caring.
Kitty, out of all the bits of an article I could have picked up.
Fingers. Oh, we know what we're going to do with that one.
We're gonna have that.
but no, but as a story, as someone again who didn't know, I think it's been done absolutely brilliantly, both written, researched, performed by everyone, because it's, you know, I think it really is one of those things that, again, I agree with something that Amy said. You know, this is something that should be taught in schools, because, you know, we learn a lot of stuff. You know, again, I don't know what the curriculum is like these days, but this is certainly something that, you know, wasn't really taught in my school. I mean, I don't really remember in schools learning necessarily about even the suffragettes. I remember they were sort of mentioned and things like that, but it wasn't something that was necessarily taught. But again, it's kind of like you were made aware of it. But the whole MatchGirls thing, again, I was aware sort of it, but this is something which has all sort of been quite new to me. And again, it really makes you realize how undertold their struggle, and also the you know, the changes and reforms that they made to the system. Because as someone, you know, obviously not in the same things, but I work in a factory putting things together, and even just the simple things, like I've never questioned going to the break room to have lunch. And you look at it and think, like, that's probably, well, it is almost certainly because of them. And I think sort of it's good, because I think more people, if you listen to this, more people in those positions will sit there and think, I've never thought of that before. You know, it's very thought-provoking. And it's, you know, I think it's a great way to get that story to more prominence.
Well said, sir. Well said.
Yeah, well said. Yeah.
One of those things that's kind of been lost in the midst of time, probably because of the whole.
I have a habit of telling stories of history that have been lost or brushed over.
Oh, what's
somebody
next?
has to, and you do it
extremely
well.
Because let's teach the kids about a murderer rather than things that should be taught about.
I have plans, people. You know that moment in history that nobody knows about? It'll magically appear on TT at some point. I'm sure.
Are we basically like doing
learning by audio?
Yeah, are we doing some sort of like horrible histories? You know, when you start learning.
Well, you know, I've said this before, and I don't know whether I've said it on a podcast or whatever. I've definitely said it to you lot. I'm one of these people who I loved horrible histories. I absolutely loved it.
I've actually learned things from horrible histories.
I still watch it now when I'm an adult.
But the thought of learning, the way they make you learn history and you don't kind of realise you're learning, that's very much the way I like to write these historicals.
For someone with ADHD, it's a perfect way of learning.
Well, like R101 as an example, because that's the only other pure historical we've done, and I like people to be immersed in a drama, but at the same point learn facts, even if they don't know they're learning facts.
Or the very least, go to a quiz and they'll randomly know an answer to something.
But there's so many points in this audio which are literally direct quotes. I have picked up a bit of article and basically copied and pasted it. Like, there's a bit with Siobhan where she writes "Dear Lady" letter, and it's signed "A Match Girl." That actually happened. That is literally a copy paste. Rumor has it was my character Sarah Chapman, but obviously me being me, I decided it was the Irish girl. But there's nobody knows who it was because it was literally signed "A Match Girl." But I don't know. I enjoy teaching people history and they don't realise it. I like tricking people.
If people listen to this and then they've listened to it and then they go onto their phone and do Match Girl just into Google, you know you've done well.
We've done.
That's all it is. You know, they don't have to go out there and read every little thing, every little article. If it just encourages people enough just to go and look for it, That's
If they
that,
can
Even if
donate
they
to the
don't type in
charity
Match
as well,
Girl, even if they
even
just
better.
type in Annie Besant,
yes,
or they type in Sarah Chapman or Alice Ferris, it will still come up with the Match Girl stuff. You know, crazy.
So yeah, I think my final question to the group, is, what has been the highlight of doing it? Is there any sort of like little outtakes or like little things that happened that have just really made you chuckle, or
Oh jeez, no, I know
Right,
exactly.
like let me start because I really want to big up Matt Lyons.
Yes.
Oh, little Matt, bless him.
Yeah, right. So Matt plays Teddy in this, and we've worked with him before. He's done some stuff with TT previous, but that last scene with Tobias Farrington, where he's literally in the alleyway and he goes, "What are you gonna do, sir?
I know.
If I
No,
speak to
honestly,
Annie,
he's
what are
amazing.
you gonna do?" And I said to him at the recording, because so before we do the recording, we have a script read over Zoom, and I said to him, do it exactly how you did it on Zoom, because when he delivered that line on Zoom, all of us were like, yes, like mic drop. We were like, yes, Matt, you smashed it. Literally that last line, chef kiss.
No, honestly, he's such an amazing kid, you know. And I remember working with him the first time, and just being that
R101. He was an R101 was his first one, yeah.
So I think I've been there through all of his stuff. There, he was in R101, he was in Dickensian, and I was like directing him there, and then obviously producing for this one. But honestly, just seeing even in the short space of these 3 audios, how amazing this kid is, and he's growing more and more into his like confidence, and I absolutely adore him. He's done so bloody well, and we just need to get him into more things.
Oh
We
yeah,
really
definitely.
The kid has got
really
such a
do.
talent for one so young. He
big
is
up to that
just.
Lines, honestly.
If I could have had like half the talent that kid's got at his age.
And I hate to break it to you, he's just going to get better and better as the time
That's
goes
it.
on as well.
Oh, God,
and
yeah.
I think he's like 12, 13 as well. We are in trouble, gang.
Yeah.
He's ours. No one else can have it.
This is mine.
He is.
This is our
Maybe
child
Overton
now.
can borrow, but he's no. Sorry, Connor.
Have to do like a Shirley Temple, put him on a lease or something, lease him out.
No, he's so good.
gonna
I really hope that he does some more stuff with TT, because I say purely like his whole performance and that last line, fantastic.
I know he's just going to get better and better.
Yeah, like I said, it's impactful. But yeah, I think I think so far, from someone who has had no involvement of this project and listening to it, it's really good. It's a really good, and you felt like you're peeping into history. It's one of the best things you can do, is sort of look and listen and feel, and you feel so much sympathy, but you feel the empowerment. You feel, again, the match has a light, so to speak. But yeah, I mean, has there anyone else got anything to say whilst we're here?
I'm trying to think of any outtakes that happened.
Yeah, was there any funny?
Mainly sticker outtake.
No. There was this one line. There was this one line that I was meant to deliver, which is just before we walked into Annie Besant's house, and I could not get it out. And it was the whole like, "Oh, were you in the bed across from your sister?" And I could not get that line out. It came out completely. It had so connotations the way I was saying it.
Oh yes, yeah.
It was a disaster, but I got it eventually. But to be truthful, like outtake wise, I don't think there was too many.
My terrible Mary standing voice was quite ridiculous.
Oh, Mary!
Oh my god!
I can't even remember what I probably couldn't do it. I just can't remember what I did.
Literally, so because we record on a thing called Zencaster, and it has a limit to how many people you can have on one Zencast, so we had to split it over 2 days. So the cast that weren't there on the Saturday, we had to have replacements, and Jimmy was Mary.
That was
terrible
so
Mary
funny.
voice.
That was great.
I don't know where that voice came from.
We're going to keep that in mind. Mary will make a return. Mary will make a return with Michelle Willows.
And then there's me trying to convince Kat's Welsh accent by filling in for.
Oh, that's another thing I learned during the stand-ins. I can kind of do an Irish accent, but I cannot be Irish whilst Kath is being Welsh. I can't do it. So on the Sunday, I was trying to be Kitty and be Irish, and obviously she was being Welsh. I could not.
You turned into Welsh, weren't you?
I couldn't do it.
Weirdly, I had the same thing because I stood in for Seamus on one of them, and I tried to do Irish, and I couldn't do it. The minute there was the Welsh came in, I just couldn't. I couldn't keep it in my head.
You can't do like some. You can't do.
Well,
You
many
can't keep
accents
up
in
an
the world,
Irish
you
accent
cannot
when there's a
keep it.
Welsh person there. You can't.
I think I did all right. My Irish accent.
Yeah, but you have a natural.
Yours is a natural accent.
You say
Chels.
that, but
It's
sometimes
fake the
Chelsea
whole
can't
time,
even
dear.
remember her own
I'm not
accent.
even
Oh no,
Irish.
Chelsea.
That's the point. Which is the real
How do I
one?
talk
Is
in
it,
my own accent?
is it Irish accent? Is it received pronunciation, or is it sticker? Which is the real one?
Which is the real Chelsea?
Well,
Which is the real Chelsea?
it's a
We
bit
will
of all,
never
really.
know.
Will the real
So you got-
Chelsea please stand up?
Yes.
What was it? It's like that James McAvoy movie. It's got the multiple personalities. This is it for Chelsea. There's like,
Ladies
if you have
and
that moment,
gentlemen.
you're Chelsea or
Ladies
sticker.
and gentlemen, schizophrenia.
Coming soon to TT Productions.
Schizophrenia.
Split
sticker. But no,
Split versus sticker.
but no. All I have to say is congratulations to you all, and honestly, well done. It's been a bit of a roller coaster ride, but we got there.
Yeah, but it's a me script, Jim. The amount of me scripts that are literally like roller coaster rides, it's crazy. I should just put that on my bio.
You should just like the audio,
Warning,
the
this is a
Alton
roller
Towers of
This is a
audio
roller
drama.
coaster. Welcome to a roller coaster.
Welcome
TT
to a roller
Productions, bringing
coaster.
adventure to audio. This one was written by Abby, so it's going to be a roller coaster. Hang on
It's
to your
gonna
hats,
be a
lads.
roller coaster.
Welcome to a
It's
video.
gonna
Your hands
happen.
and feet inside the audio drama at all times,
People
and
are
please
gonna
scream if you want to
die.
go faster.
There may be emotional moments, so please make sure you have tissues to hand. You may
Yes.
cry.
You may cry, you may laugh, you may go angry. You
Hey, at
might
least
want
we
to.
have a PG-13 thing now.
We do, which is very good.
Sponsored
Very,
by
very
Chelsea Lagan in her RP.
Thank
good.
you,
And I'll go-
dear.
This is a PG-13. It
This
means
is a PG-13, so please, children under the age of 18, pass out.
Pass on.
I think
Right,
that
and
last
on
bit
that,
got cut.
yes, and on that note, we shall love and leave you all. Please like, subscribe, and all that malarkey when it comes to YouTubes and stuff
And
like that.
donate!
And donate.
And donate.
Please
yes,
donate to
Donate.
the Memorial Fund. Please
Go and
donate.
donate, please. This is done for a charity.
Yes,
Yes.
please.
Highly
Yes.
important.
Please donate,
If
and
not, I will
honestly,
come round in a bit.
Every time you donate, I will go over to England and I will paint the statue's hand red.
Aye.
Chelsea,
Yes.
Chelsea Gladstone's hand will
What more
stay
insulting
red.
do you need,
I
people?
will hoist her up onto my shoulders. So she can
We'll take photo evidence and post them on the Patreon. Also, subscribe to our Patreon.
yeah, subscribe to the
Oh, yes. Well
Patreons. Well, we have some
Anything else we need to promote?
juicy,
Yeah, exclusive for Patreon. We love an
exclusive Patreon. We have some lovely juicy exclusives that you just got to sign in. You just got to sign in. You just got to sign in. You just get in there.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us, and I hope to see you very soon.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Oh, I'm pushing
went-
the wrong button. That helps.
I
Bye.
went.
Oh wait, there's an old box here. Hang on, I'll move that. Oh, it's stuck.
Don't tempt fate and pull a muscle.
Oh.
Are you okay, sweetheart?
Yeah, I just tripped over, I think. But I'm alright.
Please be more careful or you'll come through the ceiling below.
Yeah. Sorry. My phone. The box opened. Some papers fell on me.
Disgusting, that. Must be quite old and musty by now.
Yeah, thanks for that, Anne. I'm the one up here.
1914. And these are letters.
From who?
It says O'Neill.
Oh, yes. Well, that helps narrow it down.
Well, it's from the 1910s. I think it's, well, letters from a soldier. Tommy. There's a picture.
Well, let's get the remaining boxes up there and you can bring that stuff down.
Hello and welcome to Behind the Duvet for Hiding the Pride. We are with most of the cast of Z Audio. We have got Connor, who played Michael. We have Jimmy, who played Anthony. We have Aidan, who played Captain Freddie. Rory, who played Ben. James, who played James.
Original.
Matt Tyrell, who plays Tommy O'Neill. And of course, Chelsea Lagan playing her amazing character who pops up in everything TT-wise, Molly O'Neill. Hello. Hello. Hello.
And we are presented by our wonderful director.
Hello. I wrote and directed this audio production. So we've just finished recording it. So how did you find recording? Really? Interesting.
It was shit. No, joking. Again, I think this is that I did get a lot of similar vibes from when we did R101. But I do think that it is, I don't know. Again, I think because this is a completely different caliber, I think, acting wise, this is a pure historical.
Yeah.
And I just really enjoyed playing someone who was very commanding and, but there was something of a softness as well. And also, to actually portray a, spoiler alert, death scene. Because I don't think I've ever had really a death scene in TT, I think.
Well, you died in R101. You're in the arms of Dominic G. Martin.
Oh, well,
Well, you can't say dying in the arms of somebody.
I get died in the arms of beautiful, handsome men. I mean, what could be good?
So, what did you not think? Because the script was obviously, it wasn't just written by me; it was also written by Connor, Connor Chadwick, to use his full name. So I wrote the historical stuff, and Connor wrote the modern stuff. So, what were your initial thoughts when you were given the script once you'd read it? Because I know what you lot are like. Rory.
Oh, me. Hello. Yeah,
Hello.
I think it was incredible, really, because I think the modern day perspective really adds a sort of it adds the modern day element kind of adds a sort of hindsight to it. It gives looking back at how people were treated then compared to how people are treated now. It really ties it all together really well. I thought it the ending scene in particular, when they're going to the moment of silence, is really emotional. Yeah, I thought it was beautifully written. I think it was I thought it was really well written, really well done.
Jimmy?
I really liked the flow between the two, as very much as Rory's just said. You have, it's quite good because you've got the sort of the past stuff. It is very sort of harrowing, and it's beautifully well written in terms of the different sort of attitudes of it. But I like the fact as well that I think, especially the historical stuff, I think there are scenes in there where you kind of, it's taken as read that people were less tolerant back then, but you've got a couple of times, especially in there, where you've got characters from that era turning around and saying, it's fine with me. And it does reflect on not everyone during that time was so bigoted and so close-minded. There were the people there who did understand, whether they were family, whether they were friends, or comrades in arms. They understood it, and I think it reflects well, probably something which I think is perhaps understated in history, that at that point they realized that kind of stuff doesn't matter anymore. We're all in the same boat here.
Yeah.
We're all soldiers. We're all on the verge of, we could die any day, and there's no point in us arguing amongst ourselves about trivial things like that when we're literally fighting for the world.
Yeah.
You know, and I think it's nice to have that focus on there, because I think, like, you know, with a lot of historical things like this, you really could have just sort of played into the sort of bigotry side of things, which I think a lot of historical things do, and that's, you know, nothing against that, because that's the way it was. But it's nice to have something like this to tell the other side of it. But then also it's nice to have the reactions of the modern day side of it as well, where, you know, for example, the character that I play, Ant, is obviously, he's a bit blasé about everything initially, because it's kind of like, well, yeah, we know it happened, you know, because I think a lot of people do have that attitude today, and it's kind of like, well, it did happen, there's nothing we can do about that. But I don't think a lot of people don't necessarily understand the significance of those historical moments, because everyone just thinks, yes, it was a bigoted time, and it's like, yes, it was, but that's why it's all the more important to focus on the good side of things.
Yeah.
And and it's nice to have that sort of dynamic between the past day scenes and the present day scenes, just to sort of really, it covers both sides of the attitudes, whilst sort of also saying how even within that community the attitudes have changed. If you see what I mean?
Connor, how was it writing all the modern stuff?
Well, when I came into the project, it had already been written by yourself, Abby, for the stuff set in the past. But
Yeah.
I know it was a project that initially started off with yourself and James York.
Yeah, it was Jim.
Where James had already written some segments of it already.
Just expanded on it. Yeah.
Yeah, that effectively that's how I see it. I just saw and read through what James had written, and just sort of added to it, and just tried to sort of create, because I think it was, at the time, it was just about trying to make sure that the modern day stuff got had its own storyline as well with everything else, whilst of course in itself its main focus is on the war element. It was really good to explore the differences.
Yeah.
And obviously I know James very well. We've met up and had many coffees and many gossips. So like it's something that as well I also thought, and I'm a straight man writing this, so it was something for me that I was like, I want to make sure that it does justice, when I don't necessarily, you know what I mean, I don't necessarily belong in that group because I'm straight. So it was something very much that, obviously, James, you then came on in the capacity of basically having a look at the script after I'd done the script editing, and making sure that you were happy as well, because at the end of the day, it's all about, like, I mean, it's all well and good me coming in and writing it from a perspective that I may understand from having seen people who have gone through those experiences, but I'm ultimately not someone who has gone through those experiences.
Yeah, I think it's a great. Again, when I read the modern scenes, I think it was really well done, because I think the natural, or the kind of the stereotypical approach to have a gay couple in modern series is to either make their lives miserable, or, you know, to have that kind of still some obstacles to face. And, you know, pretty much so, just like any other couple, regardless of sexuality and gender, you're going to get your ups and downs. You're going to get people staring, and I really felt that way. And I think with the bits that I've written, I think Connor has beautifully really developed more of it, and has definitely focused on a lot of the human side. And again, even with the war side, there's a human element. This is not just, oh, let's do it's a queer story set in World War One. It's a human story that, you know, would happen to anyone, and it's beautifully done. I think this is really something that it's a story that needs telling as well.
Definitely. So, Aidan, you've been cast as a captain again. I keep doing that with you in the historicals. Because he was the captain of the R101 as well. So, like, how does it feel doing another historical?
It's like the captain just was like, "Oh, step up for me, smoke break." An inferno.
Yes.
But I don't know. It was nice playing the Freddy one because I haven't done anything really like what Army World War in a while. Like, so it was nice to give this a go and kind of put on my, I guess, like I like to call it my brigadier voice because it's.
I love it whenever he has to do the shoot them what for. Like
shoot them what for. But I like the character because like I was reading through the story and like the modern day stuff. Like I'll go with the modern day stuff first before I go into the war stuff. I really liked how that story can develop between the two in the modern day. That like, it's something very calm. Is he's just wanted to look through these letters and it starts to unfortunately affect their relationship, and it's it starts to get into really deep things, and then I kind of you kind of get emotional even though you're not the one doing lines. You're just reading through it and just being like, wow, like I mean, I have I have relations in my family who are in the homosexual community, and it's kind of like I think you can think a lot of things when going into this, and when you get to the stuff with the war, you're going into a place where that's never been spoken about. And I did get a sense of it when my character talks to James's character. I was like, there was a one line where I was like, wait a minute, this I don't know, like that. I will admit here, I was like, does he know something or does he not know?
I feel like Freddy's completely clueless. When there's a line when he's like, "Oh, well, it was just a marriage of convenience," and you're like, "Oh yes, I understand." I think he's thinking like, "Oh, he knocked her up. She was pregnant and had to get married." Whereas obviously James is like, "No, that's you don't understand. You really don't get it."
I really had that. Yeah, I mean, I was really kind of looking at it like Freddy just seems like that normal like corporate who's very kind of, we're gonna hit him hard. We're gonna do this work and whatever. And it's just, he's very out of touch with what is going on with the soldiers because like you really see these human elements with like, between obviously Tommy and James and what they're feeling. Then you have London, Sid, and trying to remember the next soldier.
Ben and Sherlock.
Ben and Sherlock, yeah, because Sherlock should be an easy one to
so family O'Neill.
Yeah, and Molly, obvious, at the beginning and at the end is kind of like you really get all these like bits where it's like, Christ, this is because you like I feel like people who listen to like war stories or even have stuff in their family, they can listen to this and it really just I looked at it and I was like, I feel like I'm watching just something with World War One, like a movie, one of those movies that would be on about it. It really connects into it, and it's like I'm looking forward to this coming out.
So O'Neills, hello O'Neills. They're family O'Neill. So the O'Neills, the O'Neills have been kind of part of TT since day dot with Molly, so it's quite nice to be expanding the Mollyverse, so to speak, because obviously we met Charlie, Molly's eldest, in Before Vastra, and now obviously we are meeting her other son, which is Tommy. Several years down the line, I hasten to add, he is 30 by this point, but he will be appearing. The O'Neills will be coming back in later projects in TT. We're not doing stuff in order with Tommy because I like to make Matt Tyrrell's life confusing. So, Matt, I remember when we cast you in January when we were away, if I remember correctly. Yes, basically because you two were like cuddling, and I was like,
just one, like you turn your eyes, like I have it.
It's like a light bulb moment.
There was a photo. There was a photo that was taken, and it was like, I think on the very last night, and I'm holding Otis's Matt Tyrrell's face. And I'm like, oh, and it was just like, that's my son.
That is mummy and son vibes, 100%. And I was like, that's got to happen, 100%. How was it playing the lead, basically, Otis?
Oh
yeah, I was the lead.
Well, it was a different sort of way to act, and than to what I've done before, because it's mainly been Who stuff and some stuff with Overton Audios and Supers. That's what I've done so far. It was probably the most challenging sort of acting I've done, because I've not done some sort of relationship sort of characters before, and I've never really been like a full-on lead properly yet, in this capacity at least. And I've not done a historical before either, so it was probably so it was challenging. It definitely pushed me. I can feel.
I'll say
'Cause
this
I
though,
was
you
very
smashed
nervous
it.
going
You
into
wouldn't
it.
know. You wouldn't know. You wouldn't know at all. You
Yeah,
really smashed it.
I was really, I was like, but like when I was reading it for the first time, I was like, I absolutely loved it, and I was like sort of gave a bit more confidence in like thinking I can actually pull this off. Like the monologue made me be like, oh bollocks, oh God,
Now
how am I
you
going to
know
do
how I
this?
feel. Now you
Yeah.
know how I feel, son.
Literally,
go.
O'Neill's. I'm like, I will give you a monologue.
Yeah, but like we broke through that. It went all nice and well.
Yeah.
I think what I appreciated about the script in general, at least with the war side I was in, is the camaraderie with all of the troops, and all their emotions going in. They're coming in. They're coming in determined. Some of them are also very afraid, but they all form some sort of like brotherhood. They joke with each other. They worry with each other, and they have this togetherness. And there's a scene with London, James, and Tommy where they all say like your secret's safe, and I really appreciate that, because in the war you form that, and that's regardless, like you get unity and determining to fight. Because we see it, we're seeing it now in Ukraine.
Yeah.
It's so much. It's something that I really appreciated. It felt very grounded in reality, for the setting, and that's what I think I've really appreciated it the most, because it felt real.
I do think one thing that kind of helped me with that is obviously I've kind of been in those sort of situations. So it was just kind of second nature trying to build that kind of like friendship, really quickly build that friendship between the lads, you know. So, Molly.
Hello.
How did it feel basically being older mammy Molly? There's the Molly, we've not really seen this Molly before. So how was it, apart from emotional?
It was brilliant to be Molly again. I love playing Molly. I love Molly as a whole, and now she's a gay ally. She supports the LGBT.
She's a queer ally. Yes,
Her best friend's Jenny.
I know exactly, but she supports, and I think it's like it's heartbreaking as well, because Molly's been through a lot already, so much in like her young life, to go to now, like there she's lost her husband, her other sons went to the Navy, now her son is going to war, and it's like, you know, having that moment of saying, obviously Molly saying goodbye to her son before he gets on that train is like, you know, it's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
But also she was just like, no, we have to have the conversation before you go. Don't be looking at any man, but if you are, you know, just be on the sly about it. You know, like that's what one thing I appreciated about Molly is how open she is, especially for that time. And like near towards the end of the story, whenever she's talking to a character, she says God loves everyone. Like she still has like the old values that she still has, about, because she obviously grew up in Ireland, God fearing peoples, Catholic. You know, she obviously feels that, you know, it's like that whole thing of God creating you in his own image. It's like God wouldn't create you, like God loves all. God created you the way you're supposed to be. Don't be lying on who you aren't. You know, don't be who you don't want to be. You be who you want to be. God loves all his children, and bloody billy billy jargon, whatever from the Bible. But no, I loved it. I loved the story. But one thing I really loved about this script, it's how it's a story within a story, and how you're following the story with characters that are in the story who are trying to follow the story. It was very different from what we usually do. And I loved it. I loved it, just the way they, reading back the letters and us like being like, right, what's going to happen next?
Yeah.
So you're always waiting for that next bit, but also following the character relationship development of Michael and Anthony. So it's always good. And I play the real estate agent, which is quite fun.
How did you find, because obviously as per tradition with these behind the duvets, we now have to spend 10 minutes talking about little Matt Lyons. So how did you find, like, spoilers have already happened anyway, but how did you find doing that last scene with him, Chelsea?
I cried, as per usual. Nobody in the audience or nobody here is surprised or shocked that I cried. Obviously, again, spoilers, Molly loses her son in the war. She loses Tommy. She's basically lost everybody at this point. Hoo-ha.
Yeah.
So, I think just channeling that moment, like, that feeling of loss, and there's just so much loss in her life.
Yeah.
And just channeling that, and then obviously Matt Lyons brings me his diary, and it's like, oh, like I just automatically get welled up with emotion when it comes to Molly. I don't know why. It's just I've known the whole history. I've lived through the history.
Literally, this is the girl who I showed like a flow diagram of her family tree, and she cried.
Oh, I cried at it. I also had, I think, COVID during that time, so I was like,
this doesn't really help. But
no, he's amazing. He's such an amazing wee actor. He's going to go places, and you know what? We'll be sitting there waving the flags and everything, like, go wee Matt Lyons.
He has done a lot, and he just gets better and better every audio. But I will say this, because originally it was supposed to be somebody different. We had to do a bit of a shuffle around with cast. But London was always supposed to be 14, because you had to be 16 to join up, but he just lied about his age, which is what a lot of boys did. A lot of boys did, and a lot of the army were like, well, they want to fight. I'll just pretend that they are 16, because a man's a man if he can hold a rifle. That's the way they saw it. And I say the original person who was supposed to play Matt Lyons was not 14. And Matt Lyons' character, London, was not 14. And about 3 months ago, Matt turned 14, and I was like, shall I be really cruel?
I think that is a cruel thing, because it has gone on in real life that these young boys thought that this was like the
just
brave
makes it 10
thing
times
to do.
more gut-wrenching when you think that he is actually the age that some boys did try to go.
And it's mad, because like I'm sitting here listening to everybody doing, when we say that scene, you'll know when it's that scene. And it's like, can you imagine a wee boy like that going through all that, and especially what happens?
Yeah.
It's like, it's horrifying. It's absolutely horrifying, and
it definitely pulls at the heartstrings more, knowing that he's the actual age.
It does. It really does. And but he pulled it off really well. He's an amazing wee lad. He is going to go places, and we helped him. We helped him stuff.
Mention TT when you're in the
remember us when you're near the lights.
So, does anybody want to add anything before we stop?
I thought it combined a lot of what it needed to be. Like the two time periods bounced off so well over each other, and you have the grounded feel in reality with the war and with the couple in modern time, and it's a story, like it's been said before, it's a story that I think is needed, because and it's important to show that it wasn't all awful then. There was good people still.
Yeah.
Just because because there's this line in one of the last scenes where they didn't keep it in official records, and that's important to recognize regardless, because there were these are probably real people that actually did have this thing sort of going on, and throughout wars in history, and
they had to hide
yeah,
it.
it's a very important story, and it's going to be very impactful for everyone.
Yeah.
It's a very definition of this story really sums up that thing of this is the freedom that they were fighting for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And it doesn't shy away. It just is like, this is what it is.
This is what happened. It's not nice, but that's what happened.
It's
It
very
did
what
everything a war story should do. It was reflective. It didn't like undermine the horrors they went through, and it was very human story. And I think the final line as well was a beautiful note to end it on, about not hiding their pride anymore and about them being free. It was really, that was kind of brought me to tears. Really, really brilliant script.
Yes, Connor.
I think it's nice and multi-layered as well, because it has an element of, well, education, but also I like to think as well that it helps that community feel seen as well, because there's something that I think that we very much wanted to do with this was to almost like there's this scene when Michael and Anthony, for example, in modern day are having dinner, and they talk about a weird guy at work who was commenting on them about them being able to get a mortgage together, which both shows the progression made, but also the old-fashioned views that are still around to really kind of show that, like, obviously there are more people that are accepting than ever now, but there are still there's still work to be done. We're not in a utopia yet.
No.
And I think for me, I feel as a homosexual myself in real life and on screen.
Really?
Oh my God, jeez!
I know this is my coming out video.
Finally happening. You're coming out the closet.
I'm coming out of the trenches. So again, it's great because it's something that I can relate to, and I think a lot of queer people can relate to. So much, the idea that yes, we're living in modern times, and yes, it may not be illegal, or we have rights and stuff like that, but there is still that hate outside in the world. And I think to show just how yes, a lot of things have changed, but there's still something.
There's still something there.
There's still something. I think that it shows that we still got a long way to go.
So that was Behind the Duvet for Hiding the Pride. I hope you enjoyed the audio. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
And subscribe somewhere in here. Put things in the comments.
Yeah. Thank you.
Hello and welcome back to the podcast. It's myself and Daniel Patton.
Hello.
Indeed.
That was very interesting to hear. Which also, I'm not sure if you guys touched up on this, but the MatchGirls of Bow is actually a certain Maggie May's TT debut audio.
Indeed. I think I'm in it as well. I play Mr. Bryant.
I think I was the only one who wasn't in it.
Oh my word.
But moving on.
But yes, so we have, the future. What's coming out soon on Overton Audios? Good question, Daniel. I'm glad you asked.
Well, all we can say, it features a potato and a lizard and a maid.
Play the trailer.
Overton Audios presents.
Stay close, Jack.
Assume attack positions.
Strax.
Drop your weapons, all of you.
We ain't here to hurt no one. Whenever here is.
You turn up by the Houses of Commons armed to the teeth and you expect me not to think this is some sort of attack?
Of course, it's not hard for me to assume that time travel is at play here.
We are from 1892.
For all we know, our own timeline could have been changed.
Well, for now, you will have to remain here.
In 2021.
Hi, my name's Henry Woodman. Colonel Stevenson sent me to look after you three.
Torture the unit. No, let me guess. You don't have the blank stare for Torchwood.
Yeah, that's right. Are you good?
Oh, kind of got carried away.
Brigadier Robson has the power to make you an enemy of the state, the entire United Kingdom.
Welcome to my laboratory.
Thank you, Nidrak.
Your file says you were a fearsome warrior.
Yes.
And I know what's possible, and this is possible.
We've spoken about this, John, many times. When you cross your own timeline and it cancels out the other.
This thing actually works.
Us getting back to our time is of great importance.
We need to stop Benjamin before he uses this weapon again on other people.
The Paternoster Gang. Future Outcomes. Volume 1. Coming the 13th of July 2024 at 12 p.m. Wow, what a trailer!
Well, that's not exactly what I mentioned. If I was an actual potato, but it's turned to be Strax.
Indeed. Prism Universe introduces the Paternoster Gang. Now, you'll have noticed recently, in terms of what we've been doing with the Toverton exclusive releases on SoundCloud, we have been releasing the TT Productions version of the Paternoster Gang. I'm aware that I've even tried to explain it to one of the cast members who have actually appeared in both versions now.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you who it is. I'll call him out. Lewis Wheelhouse.
Lewis.
The way I've explained it is in the TT version, or the TT Productions 23 version of the Paternoster Gang, Jenny Flint on the cover is played by Abby.
Yeah.
It also has TT's logo on it. However, if you see the Prism Pat Gang stuff, you will see the Prism logo in the corner and Overton Audios, and you'll see that Jenny is not Abby. It's the photo of the original actress, who is Catherine Stewart. The way I've put it to Lewis is, if you play Henry Woodman in it, it's the Prism one. If you don't, it's not.
Yeah.
He doesn't seem, he's still struggling, but it's because he's played quite a few characters with them. Abby, Louise, and I have been producing that. It was something that we'd been thinking about for about a year. In fact, she started writing it March last year. She started writing it before me and her were dating.
Oh,
so that's an interesting thing.
That's a development.
If nobody knew we were dating, that's even more interesting.
Whoa.
But nonetheless, we have got big plans for it. It's nice to work on something fresh, and it's also nice to have Henry Woodman in it, because Henry he's had his own singular volume with Henry Woodman into the multiverse.
Yeah.
I got him into the Prism 60th as well, but I'm glad that he's found a place now at the moment to be.
Yeah, exactly.
He's either only had a one-off series after a few years of absence, or has appeared as more of a cameo. But this is the first one where he's kind of an unofficial member of the Pat Gang as they try and navigate 2021 after a fight with an inventor who's trying to master time travel. Ooh. So now they're stuck in present day, trying to get home to 1892. However, the man at fault who has done this has got much more to him than you realize. And that's what we'll find out. This entire storyline is called Future Outcomes. Volume 1 has been very interesting to do. It's going to be a 4-volume storyline, but we promise to make it as interesting as possible. We will be working on Volume 2 soon. We're going to try and make it a bit more frequently than yearly, but as you'll see with all the other releases we've got coming out, there's just so much to do.
There's just too much.
It's too much.
Exactly.
But we will be having them appear in places like the Pat Gang. Whilst they have their own thing, there will be some characters cameoing in other volumes, as you'll see in the upcoming months. And that will be what's interesting and fun.
Yes.
But nonetheless, sir, shall we say farewell to the lovely listeners?
I think we shall. For this month at least. We're back next month, where things will still be as fresh as they are, and things will still be all positive.
Indeed. In fact, next month, I can tell you that we'll be talking... Well, we'll have a little segment of one of the Toverton exclusives, and it's the Talking Heads podcast, which was a one-off podcast made by TT Productions in co-production with Overton Audios at the time, and it was meant to be bringing lots of different creators together to talk about their methods. However, the first episode we got too many people. So it like, and then obviously things have just moved on. We're going to see if we can try and bring the Talking Heads podcast back a little bit, but we shall see. We shall see. Nonetheless, we're going to be talking about it in the next podcast. Nonetheless, we'll also be talking about the big conclusion to Multiversal, Doctor Who Multiversal, which, as of when this podcast comes out, it finished 2 days ago.
Damn.
So we'll be talking about that, and then of course we'll be talking about the Paternoster Gang, the Prism volume, and then we'll also be reading the comments for the current First Doctor adventures that is coming out. Hooray! Lots of stuff to come, lots of stuff to quickly plan people to be recording for. So hooray! Anyway. Hooray, yay! Anyway, thank you so much for all of you for listening. Thank you to our Patreons as well for supporting us. That is always appreciated, and I do keep forgetting to mention you in the podcast, but it is always appreciated massively.
Yeah, indeed. And there will be a link, well, there's shadows, to the Patreon in the YouTube bio on Overton Audios. Will there be chatters? There should be. There should be.
Yeah, there should be. If there isn't,
no. I'm not saying there should be. I'm saying there should be. For anyone to help contribute to Overton Audios and all the productions, especially the podcast, because the podcast is becoming a bit pricey to make with the ever increasing costs of Zoom and such.
Yeah.
But yes, I would appreciate any help at all.
Indeed.
But we'll be back next month, no worries at all. And until then, we'll see you guys next month.
Indeed. Farewell.
Farewell all. Bye-bye.